Welcome to the December 5th, 2023 City Council meeting. I am City Council President Jim Nash, and I will be presiding this evening. Before we begin, I want to let everyone know that this meeting and all participating on Zoom will be audio and video recorded. Important items before City Council this evening are 6 financial orders to appropriate community preservation funds to affordable housing, multi-use trails, historic clothing, and pickleball courts. We will also consider 7 other financial orders. Of note, one asking us to appropriate $3 million in undesignated funds to our stabilization funds, and another asking us to authorize the borrowing of $2 million for paving projects. City Council will also discuss and possibly approve changes to Council Rule 4.8 having to do with public comment. And we will consider a resolution calling on the federal government to pull back from the brink of nuclear war. Due to a recent uptick in COVID infection rates, we are following the recommendations of Health Commissioner O'Leary to take steps to socially distance when meeting indoors. As you can see, councilors here in council chambers are seated 6 feet or more apart. We are encouraging those in attendance to do the same. And for those of you who wish to wear a mask, we have made them available at the back of the room on the bench. As always, I want to extend a special thanks to Northampton Open Media for their efforts to make this hybrid meeting possible, and a special shout out to Dave Newland for his service to the city through his work at NOM. Thank you, Dave. Round of applause. All right. I now call the City Council to order. Laura, can you please call the roll?
Sure. Councilor Elton. Can't see if she's physically present.
She is not.
Okay, thank you. Councilor Foster.
Here.
Councilor Gore.
Here.
Councilor Jarrett.
Here.
Councilor Labarge. Here. Councilor Maori.
Here.
Councilor Moulton.
Here.
Councilor Nash.
Here.
And Councilor Perry.
Here.
Council President, you have a quorum.
Okay, thank you. I also want to mention that Councilor Elkins was texting me earlier that she was feeling ill. She was going to try to make it to this meeting. She may be able to log on at some point, but she's not feeling well this evening. Okay, next up on the agenda is public hearings. I have an announcement of a public hearing. Announcement of public hearing on item 23.395, National Grid Verizon poll petition for Park Street. Per Mass General Law, Chapter 66, Section 22, the Northampton City Council will hold a public hearing on Thursday, December 21st, 2023 at 7 p.m. in Council Chambers at 212 Main Street, Northampton, MA, on National Grid's Verizon petition to remove one JO pole, pole number 12, and relocate another pole, pole number 11, on Park Street. Instructions for accessing the hearing remotely may be found on the December 21st, 2023 City Council agenda, to be posted on www.northamptonma.gov no later than 48 hours prior to the meeting. The City Council will hear all persons who wish to be heard thereon. So that's, now we come to public comment. And so, folks in the room, is there anybody in the room wishing to make a public comment? We have a sign-up sheet at the podium. And if there's anybody who wants to make a comment remotely, we ask that you raise your virtual hand. And I see one person's already done that. So nobody in the room is, okay. There's not even a sign-up sheet.
There's a sign-up sheet, but there are no names on it.
Okay, all right. So we have one person joining us remotely. It's Arlene Kirsch. Let's see if we can get you unmuted. Can you unmute her?
We go.
There we go.
Got it.
Welcome,
Hi.
Arlene.
Well, thank you very much, and thank you for allowing the public comment, and thank you for just being a wonderful city council. We're very lucky. I am going to read into the record testimony from Dr. Ira Helfand, who couldn't be here tonight to join the meeting at all. So he sent this to Councilors Foster and to Councilor Moulton, but I'm going to read it into the record if that's okay. Is that
It's
okay?
Is it under 2 minutes?
I believe so. I'll be
Okay.
quick.
We will.
I want to thank,
We
okay,
will count that as your public comment, and now it's now Ira's, and we will start again the 2 minutes. How's that?
thank you.
Okay.
I want to thank the council for considering back from the brink resolution this evening and urge you to pass it and make sure that Senators Warren and Markey are informed of your vote. As you know, Northampton became the first municipality in the country to adopt a back from the brink resolution in the fall of 2017. We have now been joined by more than 70 other cities and towns, including Boston, Philadelphia, Baltimore, Washington, D.C., Chicago, Los Angeles, and San Francisco. A congressional resolution introduced by Congressman Jim McGovern has been co-sponsored by 42 other members of the House. Unfortunately, the federal government has not yet adopted the back from the brink policy prescription, and we are closer to a nuclear catastrophe than we have ever been. Furthermore, a study published in the highly respected journal Nature Food showed that a war between the U.S. and Russia would trigger a global nuclear famine that would kill more than 5 billion people in the first 2 years. Even a more limited nuclear war, as might occur between India and Pakistan, could kill up to 2 billion people, including 130 million here in the U.S. Our federal government needs to acknowledge that nuclear weapons do not make us safe, but in fact are the greatest threat to our safety and survival. And it needs to invite the other 8 nuclear-armed states to come together to negotiate a verifiable, time-bound plan to eliminate their arsenals so they can all join the Treaty on the Prohibition of Nuclear Weapons. It is most appropriate that at this very dangerous moment for the Northampton City Council to reaffirm its support for this effort to prevent nuclear war. Please vote in favor of this resolution. Ira Helfand, MD. Past President, International Positions for the Prevention of Nuclear War, the recipient of the 1985 Nobel Prize, co-founder, I'm sorry?
I think there was an echo. Go ahead, finish your sentence.
Okay, co-founder and past president, Physicians for Social Responsibility, the U.S. affiliate of IPPNW, member International Steering Group ICANN, the recipient of the 2017 Nobel Prize, and recipient of the 2023 Gandhi King Aikida Award, the Martin Luther King Jr. International Chapel at Morehouse College. Thank you.
Thank you, Arlene. Okay, is there anybody in the room who would like to speak, or anybody remotely? Okay, seeing none, we will now move on to announcements from councilors and the mayor. Councilor Jarrett.
Got one. Legislative matters. We'll be meeting on Monday, December 11th at 5 p.m. here in City Council chambers and also on Zoom to continue the public hearing on the proposed lighting ordinance. So please join us then.
Thank you for that reminder. Any other announcements? Mayor.
Dang, it's not good, but my Wi-Fi is unstable, so, oh dear. You all see that?
Wow.
No.
Oh.
Yikes. I was gonna announce that, Look Park is having Santa's trains, and I was trying to get the date that it started and the date that it ended. I can tell you what date I'll be there, receiving tickets, which is, I will be there on Sunday, thank you. Sunday, the 17th, from 3:30 to 8 p.m. with the Florence Civic and Business Association, who will be elves, and I'll be a conductor, and we would love to have everyone come visit there. But, the Santa's trains are throughout this month at Look Park. And then I also wanted to just remind everybody about First Night, which is Sunday, December 31st. This is the 39th First Night here in Northampton. There will be 23 venues, hundreds of performers. The noon kickoff at the Academy of Music offers 2 performances of Show Circus. If you've never been to that show, it's amazing. Get there early, it sells out. So that kicks off the day. And then there are venues throughout the city, and just many, many, many performances. Fireworks are at 6:15, and then there's evening entertainment, and then, of course, the iconic ball raising at the Hotel Northampton at midnight, and Steve Sanderson will be spinning some tunes down there, so everyone can dance in the street and celebrate the new year. People, if you get tickets before the 31st, so by December 30th, there is a discount. And if you go to firstnightnorthampton.org, you can find out all the info. So you can find out about tickets, where you can get them, the venue map, the full schedule. So go to firstnightnorthampton.org for all of that. And they are still looking for volunteers. If you've never volunteered at First Night before, it is incredibly fun. I've done it for the past couple years. And you get a complimentary button. Did I say tickets? Button. It's a button. We all know it's a button. You get a complimentary button that gets you into all of the events. So you do a shift, which is super fun. I mean, it's really great to welcome people into events. And then you get to go to whatever venues you like to go to. So please, they really, really do need volunteers. So anyone who's willing to volunteer, please, again, go to that website, firstnightnorthampton.org, and volunteer. And I'll see you on the 31st. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor. Yeah, I saw the flyer on the website. It looks great.
Yeah.
It's a really fabulous flyer.
I think there are even puzzles. I think the poster has been made into a puzzle that you can purchase if you'd like.
Cool. All right. Any other announcements? Okay. Maybe before 10. Okay, now we're up to the consent agenda. All right. We have the minutes of the November 9th, 2023 special city council meeting and the November 16th, 2023 regular meeting. We have item 23.399, in order to appropriate transportation infrastructure enhancement funds to NHS road safety improvement soft cost, that's in second reading on the consent agenda. We have item 23.400, appointments to Arts Council, City Services, recommendations. Actually, you guys met on these, right? Mm-hmm. And they both have positive recommendations? Correct, okay. So we have Indy Francis for the, these are both for the Arts Councils. We have Indy Francis and Sarah Siegel. And then we have item 23.403, application for supervised display of fireworks for First Night. So that is it for the consent agenda. Are there any requests for removal?
I will move to approve then.
Motion made by Councilor Perry, seconded by Councilor Labarge to approve the consent agenda without any removals, and also to approve the items on the consent agenda. There's no discussion on the consent agenda. Laura, roll call, please.
Can we do a voice
Okay.
vote?
Oh, yeah, we can do a voice vote. Oh, Marissa's not in the meeting, right? Okay. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions? All right, that passes unanimously. All right, next up, we are to our long list of financial orders. Counselor Foster.
My moment, Counselor Nash.
Oh, yeah, go ahead.
As the executive director of All Out Adventures has a financial interest in several of the items that are on the agenda through the Community Preservation Act Committee, and so I need to recuse myself from those discussions. I'll be showing myself out of council chambers, and I trust someone to come get me when you've moved on.
Pick up a pizza for us while you're out.
I'll come back with snacks, counselors.
Thank you, Karen. Okay, so now we are on to financial orders, and we have 6 items related to CPA funds. Okay, the first, and these are always good to read. We have order 23.404. Am I doing it in order? Okay. In order to appropriate $420,000 in CPA funds to Valley CDC for a Laurel Street housing project, ordered that whereas the Valley Community Development submitted a CPA application for construction of 20 affordable apartments at 23 Laurel Street that will be permanently restricted to households earning 60% of area median income or less, whereas the project meets the goals of the Housing Needs Assessment and Strategic Plan by increasing the supply of affordable rental housing for families in a desirable, walkable neighborhood near transit, open space, and recreational opportunities close to downtown, and leverages nearly $13 million in funds from other sources, whereas on November 29, 2023, the Northampton Community Preservation Committee voted to recommend that $420,000 in Community Preservation Act funds be used to support the projects. Therefore, therefore, it be ordered that $420,000 be appropriated from Community Preservation Act funding to the Valley CDC for Laurel Street housing project, and that the grantee meets the conditions approved by the Community Preservation Committee, the mayor, and the city council. And I'll skip the last line. So, is Sarah here to speak to this, or? Did I read it right? Did I sum it up well, or?
Yes, I think you did. So I'll start with just a quick overview of the CPC process this round.
That's right.
And then I'll talk about this one. So in September of this year, the CPC began reviewing project proposals that were submitted for CPA funding consideration. It was a little bit of a tough round. There was about $2.2 million available for the entire fiscal year, and the applications just this round totaled over 1.4, totaled over 2.5 million, so they had to make some tough choices. But it all worked out, so the ones that are coming before you are what they're putting forward for this round. And those total just over 1.4 million, and they include all of the eligible CPA project areas, and those are historic preservation, recreation, affordable housing, and open space preservation. And the CPA funding being recommended tonight will leverage more than $16 million in funding from other sources. And there will be, because there is about $750,000 remaining, there will be a second round of CPA funding that starts in January. So this Laurel Street housing application is one that the committee was really enthusiastic about, recommending full funding as Valley CDC had proposed. So it will allow the Valley CDC to complete construction of 20 affordable housings on a vacant parcel that had formerly been part of the State Hospital campus on Laurel Street. This is a little bit atypical for an affordable housing project in the CPA funding stream, because the CPA funds are the last dollars in at this point. Valley CDC thought that they would be able to achieve this completely with state and federal funding and other grant sources, but due to some cost overruns and, unanticipated increases that everybody's seeing in construction, they did have to come in for this $420,000, but the CPC was really enthusiastic about it. It should be a great project.
Any questions, Counselor? Counselor Maori?
Yeah, it seems like we're achieving a good and better balance between affordable housing grants and, conservation. Is that correct?
So the recommendations that come before you are really a result of what's submitted in the funding rounds. So this was a substantial affordable housing application that the CPC was happy to recommend. But the percentages are fairly even. Affordable housing is at 23.7% of all the total recommended since this CPA has been in existence in Northampton.
That seems like a lot higher than when I first started on council, because I remember we had a conversation. It seems like either we're getting more applications for affordable housing, or maybe, just setting our intention on.
Yeah, they do tend to go up and down, and it's a result of the capabilities and capacity of the affordable housing organizations. So sometimes it gets to be a little bit lower, but they're all, the four categories are pretty even at this point.
Thank you.
Counselor Labarge?
Thank you. Sarah. Thank you, Alex. 60% area medium income or less. Can you explain that to whoever might be watching this tonight about the level of income?
Sure. So affordable housing is designated by area median income, so that's the Springfield MSA. I don't know the numbers off the top of my head, but 100% of area median income is, what your median household would earn in a given year, and then there's 80%, 60%. 60% is what this project is targeted at, so those are people who are earning 60% of that number. Yeah.
Okay. I'm very happy to see this order of 20 affordable apartments coming in, because that's all we've been hearing about how difficult it is for people to live here. And there's no way I'm going to say I'm not going to support this, because I do agree with affordable housing. So anyways, I thank the CPI Commission and also you, Sarah, for handling the team and making this happen. Thank you.
Thank you, Counselor. Any other questions, comments?
Actually, I would love.
Go ahead.
Yeah, I just wanted to also thank the community in that neighborhood, because the residents in general, I've been really impressed with their amount of support for such a big change in their neighborhood, and so kudos to the neighborhood.
All right. This is a financial order in first reading, and we can send it to the consent agenda of our next meeting, or we can send it to finance. Counselor Jarrett.
Yeah, I'll make a motion to move this to the consent agenda.
I'll second that.
Okay, motion made by Counselor Jarrett, seconded by Counselor Labarge to put this on the consent agenda. Any further discussion on this? I'll just want to add, this is great stuff. This is wonderful. Hearing no more discussion, Laura, roll call. It's a financial order.
No, but it's only a referral.
Referral. Okay, all right. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions? Okay, that has been placed on the consent agenda at our next meeting. Next up is item 23.405, in order to appropriate $75,000 in CPA funds for design of a multi-use trail within the Rocky Hill Greenway. Let's take a look at this one. Upon the recommendation of the Community Preservation Committee, 23.405, in order to appropriate $75,000 in CPA funds for design of a multi-use trail within the Rocky Hill Greenway, whereas the Northampton Office of Planning and Sustainability submitted a CPA application for final design of a multi-use trail within the Rocky Hill Greenway, whereas the trail will connect residential areas along Rocky Hill Road to the New Haven and Northampton Canal Trail, and will allow the city to access federal funds for trail construction. Whereas on November 29, 2023, the Northampton Community Preservation Committee voted unanimously to recommend that $75,000 in Community Preservation Act funds be used to support the projects. And I think that kind of sums it up. And Sarah's here to answer questions related to this. Counselors. Counselor Jarrett.
Now, CPA funds were given to this a few years ago, right?
There were, yeah.
Why are we seeing more now for the design?
So Mass DOT made some changes since this project was first initiated, maybe 6 or 7 years ago, to their requirements. Some changes to the parking area were required. A wall was added, and there were also some cost increases from the engineers. So we're at like 100% Part A, and we're hoping to get to 100% Part B and make it completely final and be ready to go out to bid. So the $75,000, although it's a little bit more than was anticipated when that first order came before you I think it was last year, it should allow the city to get to the final stage and go out to bid. And at that point, we'll be able to secure about $3.6 million in federal funding, so no municipal funds will be required at that point.
Thank you.
Councilor Labarge, you had a question.
No, he answered some.
Oh, okay.
Fine.
He's so efficient, I love it. Okay. Any other questions? I have one. It mentions the Northampton Canal, New Haven and Northampton Canal Trail. How is that included in, how is that part of the property? I wasn't aware of that.
So this will connect Route 10 near the bike path bridge with Route 66 near the House of Corrections. So it will be a direct link between those routes.
Okay. Now I'm remembering. Okay. Counselors, any other questions?
I'll move its referral to the consent agenda.
Second.
it.
Motion made by Counselor Moulton and seconded by Counselor Jarrett. It was close.
Problem.
To put this on the consent agenda. Any further discussion? Hearing none. All in favor of putting this on the consent agenda, say aye. Aye. Any abstentions? Any nays? Okay, that passes unanimously to put that on the consent agenda, and that will appear on the consent agenda at our next meeting. All right, next. I'm up here. C. We have item 23.406, in order to appropriate $18,000 in CPA funds for design of a universal access trail within the Broad Brook Greenway. This is in first reading. Okay. 23.406, in order to appropriate $18,000 in CPA funds for design of a universal access trail within the Broad Brook Greenway, ordered that, whereas the Northampton Office of Planning and Sustainability submitted a CPA application for design of a universal access trail from the Cook Avenue entrance to the Broad Brook Greenway, whereas the project meets the goals of the Northampton Sustainability Plan and Open Space, Recreation, and Multi-Use Trail Plan, whereas the design will increase access to one of the city's most popular open spaces and will continue to maintain necessary vehicle access to Fitzgerald Lake for critical maintenance and improvements, Whereas on November 29th, 2023, the Northampton Community Preservation Committee voted unanimously to recommend that $18,000 in Community Preservation Act funds be used to support this project. And I'm going to stop there. And Sarah, do you have anything to add to that description? Counselors, do you have any questions?
Well, I could start by saying that this project, although it's a pretty small dollar amount, should have a big impact to increase access to the Broadbrook Greenway. Everybody has a different goal when they go out to visit a conservation area. Some people want to go to the dam, and this won't quite get there, at least not yet. But some people, like me, want to go out and see, heron rookeries and beaver dams and watch birds, and this will get you to a really exciting bog and swamp. You can see beavers, all sorts of wildlife. And it's a little bit of a complicated site because it needs to be maintained for vehicle access. The city partners with the Broadbrook Coalition to do work on the dam and within the greenway, and we also need to hire contractors to do work on the site. So it's not as easy as just making a walking path, so it does need some additional engineering. But it should be a good project with a lot of positive impacts.
Councilor Maori, then Councilor Labarge.
Yeah, Sarah, could you describe what a universal access trail is?
So it's accessible to everyone, regardless of your ability. It has a slope that meets federal and state guidelines. It doesn't have any impediments like rocks and roots. I've known people who have been out there with their dogs or have been running and have injured themselves because of unseen hazards, and this will address those and it just should make a better trail experience for everyone.
You think that it is wheelchair accessible?
It will be.
Oh,
Yep.
that's
Yep.
very exciting.
Yeah, and it will be a good complement to the work that's being done at Cook Avenue. So we're creating a small parking lot for the greenway so people don't have to hug the right side of the narrow driveway when they're parking. Will be a dedicated accessible space, dedicated EV charging space, and there will also be Habitat for Humanity affordable units created there. So this will be a good complement to that.
Yes, it will. Thank you.
Councilor Labarge.
Yes, is this going to be paved or?
Not paved. So it will be soft surface of some sort. We'll work with Broadbrook Coalition and other stakeholders to figure out exactly what it will look like and what our options are, but it will not be paved.
How long is this trail?
About a third of a mile, one way.
Third of a mile. I'm glad to hear that it's going to be wheelchair accessible.
Yeah,
A lot of voices about the trails now being accessible for wheelchairs.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of our greenways and conservation areas are a challenge to create accessible trails because of slope and wetlands and other issues, so we're trying to grab those opportunities wherever we can.
I was a little concerned when I heard you say slope.
Yeah, it's, the slope is not too bad. It needs some fine-tuned grading in some spots.
Thank you.
But more to come.
I would like to make a motion to move this to the consent agenda.
Second.
Motion made by Councilor Labarge, seconded by Councilor Moulton to put this on the consent agenda at our next meeting. Any further discussion on that? Okay, hearing none. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions? It passes unanimously with those folks in the room. Okay, next up is item 23.407. In order to appropriate $535,000 in CPA funds for design of multi-use trail within the Connecticut River Greenway.
Another one.
Be ordered that, whereas the Northampton Office of Planning and Sustainability submitted a CPA application for the design of a multi-use trail from Damon Road to Hatfield within the Connecticut River Greenway, whereas the trail will provide dramatic views of the Connecticut River, and Holyoke Range will provide a safe transportation route for bicycles and pedestrians, whereas CPA funds will ultimately allow the city to access federal funds for trail construction and is critical since funding sources for necessary design are not readily available. Whereas on November 29, 2023, the Northampton Community Preservation Committee voted unanimously to recommend that $535,000 in Community Preservation Act funds be used to support the projects. And I think that pretty much describes things. And Sarah, is there anything else to add?
Sure. So this is a project that's been a long time in the making, but over the past years, a lot has happened. The city was able to acquire the remaining 50% interest in land it's owned for decades from a property owner. You know, owning half an interest in property doesn't allow anybody to do anything. So now that we own the full interest, we can move forward with the trail planning. We're beginning to work with the town of Hatfield. That's a town that doesn't currently have any multi-use trails, but this was the concept of it was approved at town meeting. And the committee recognizes that this was a substantial ask for a trail design, but it will be a very complicated trail to design. You know, there's the highway, there's the railroad, there's the river, so there's all sorts of issues to work around and deal with. But it will provide a continuous link from Hatfield to the rest of the trail network, and it will have just absolutely amazing views that aren't replicated anywhere else on Northampton. If you're in the passenger seat of a car and you look towards the river just at the right time on 91, you can maybe get a little glimpse of it, but this will really open up some additional vistas and should be an incredibly popular trail.
Councilor Labarge.
Yes, looking at it, stating the CPA funds will ultimately allow the city to access federal funds for trail construction.
Correct.
That's critical.
Yeah, I mean, the city needs to come up with the funding to get to certain design stages to get into the Transportation Improvement Program funding queue. We're currently at 10%, so that's just initial levels of design. This will allow us to get to the next stage and move forward.
And this, with Hatfield, this is going to connect with them. This is the first time for them, right?
It is.
Exactly.
Councilor Jarrett.
Yeah. It's exciting to see this project move along. I have hiked along there, and I agree it's a fabulous area, and it'll make a great connection. It is a lot of money to spend. Over $500,000 CPA grant is definitely something we want to think carefully about. But I hear that the CPC really weighed the options and the other things, other applications, and decided it was worth it.
Yeah,
So-
and this was one where the committee took a really close, detailed look at the budget to see if there was anything that could be cut, and there just wasn't a way to, line item eliminate. Maybe we could postpone this, maybe we could use a different contractor for this. It's really just hiring one engineering firm to get you to the next stage.
Thank you.
Councilor Martin, because you already went. We'll come back to you.
Can you, besides accessing, it's federal money that this will leverage, correct?
Correct.
Besides that, there was a question raised during the CPC review about the fact that there's a very small portion of this trail in Hatfield, and the city is picking up the cost, but there is a bond bill that Hatfield received that the city is seeking to get access to that money as well in connection with this. Is that?
Yes, so there was an earmark through the bond bill that we haven't accessed yet, but that will contribute to the design funding as well.
Right, so it's a true partnership with Hatfield in that respect,
It is.
In terms
Yeah,
of
yeah.
getting
So-
access to some money that they, or this bond bill that they had received.
Yeah, and we're working towards final signing of a memorandum of understanding with the town of Hatfield to trade some property. They own some property in Northampton. Northampton owns some property in Hatfield. Curious how it happened, but squaring that all away and also ensuring that Hatfield will participate in the design process.
Thank you.
Councilor Labarge.
Nope,
Did he answer your question again?
the bond part, yeah.
Any other questions? Well, I just want to say, as somebody who will be getting in shape to make that bike loop around, up through Hatfield and down through Sunderland, it's beautiful. You can ride along the highway, the routes are really peaceful, but having to go up King Street and to connect up with Hatfield, to having a really pleasant way of being down along the river, it's a wonderful idea. And also the fact that, Boston has an esplanade, and it celebrates being along the river. And we have pieces. We have the new area, the boat launch area. We have the area near the what we call the rail bridge, that you can get down. But to have another piece that kind of links it up, to have that feeling of like, we have a river here and we can enjoy it, and different people, you can access it by boat, but you can also get out there. This is a multi-use trail. And so, other people can get out there and enjoy this. So I think this is a really cool investment, that much the way that, refurbishing that rail bridge was, that it's that kind of exciting investment for, for recreation. So I think I'm going to vote in favor. Any further discussion on this? We need a motion
I'll make a motion to
to,
approve. Put it on the consent.
yes, okay.
Yes, second.
Okay, motion made by Councilor Labarge and seconded by Councilor Maori to put this on the consent agenda. Any further discussion on putting this on the consent agenda? Hearing none, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Okay, that's unanimous with the folks in the room. So item 23.407, in order to appropriate $535,000 in CPA funds for design of a multi-use trail within the Connecticut River Greenway, will appear on the consent agenda at our next meeting. Next up is, all right, E.
408.
Thank you. Item 23.408, order to appropriate $65,000 in CPA funds to a historic Northampton clothing collection preservation project. Whereas Historic Northampton, Inc. submitted a CPA application for work to complete urgent intensive care to its historic clothing collection, whereas the clothing collections are unique, yield important information about the history of the city and its residents, and are frequently accessed for research and education by community members, businesses, educational institutions, and nonprofits, whereas on November 29, 2023, the Northampton Community Preservation Committee voted unanimously to recommend that $65,000 in Community Preservation Act funds be used to support the project. Is there anything else you want to add to that summary there, Sarah?
Sure. So Historic Northampton has a really amazing clothing collection. It's world-renowned and includes all types of different types of gowns and everyday wear, which is especially unique because that tends to get lost over time. Regular people don't necessarily save their clothes. They donate them or turn them into rags or what have you. But Historic Northampton has accumulated just this tremendous collection of clothes representing all different eras, from local people to those more far and wide. And this will allow Historic Northampton to complete urgent care to preserve it. So this includes repairs that are necessitated from centuries spent on hangers, like anybody who's hung up something for a while and gets the little things on the corners, or, it starts to droop, multiply that by 175 years, and it's really damaging, especially in items where the skirts are really heavy and they're pulling on the top of it and they haven't been stored properly. So we'll allow them to address that, do archival cleaning, structural supports, repair work to hats and shoes so that they maintain their shapes, purchasing acid-free boxes and muslin bags, and covers to protect items from dust and UV damage. And if anyone hasn't seen the collection or hasn't taken a look at Historic Northampton's online photos, I definitely encourage you to do that.
Councilor Labarge.
Yes, Sarah, we're looking at $65,000. How much clothing is actually in there?
A lot. So I visited Historic Northampton on some other business, and I said, "Do you want to see the clothes?" Like, I'd love to see them. And it's the upper floors are just packed full of like museum quality garments, and all of them are in various stages of repair, and were donated in different eras, and they're all a little bit different and need different care. But it's a really extraordinary collection, and they have a lot of
I
items.
have friends who have donated clothing there, old clothing, and they went back and they wanted to see them, and they told them, they couldn't do it right now because they couldn't find them.
Yeah, and that's part of this too, is making sure that everything is properly cataloged and is entered into a system so that they can see it, which will in turn make it more accessible to the public.
So how long have they been sitting there? That's my question. You're talking about all these shoes and clothing. How long?
Various. I mean, some of it.
Ever since that place is.
Yeah, and it's really even longer, because sometimes people will open up a box when they're cleaning out a house and say, "Oh, there's hats and all sorts of stuff in here," and they bring it to Historic Northampton and donate it.
And once this is done, how good is that there for?
The clothing collection, I think this will fulfill all of their urgent needs. They do have other collections, and we'll have ongoing needs for those as well. But this is what was requested for the clothes.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Okay,
I'll move to refer to consent agenda.
Second,
motion made by Councilor Moulton, seconded by Councilor Labarge to put this on the consent agenda at our next meeting. Any discussion about that? Okay, hearing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Okay, that carries unanimously, and that will be on the consent agenda at our next meeting. Next up is item 23.409. In order to appropriate $350,000 in CPA funds to Northampton Parks and Rec for Ellerbrook Field pickleball courts. Whereas Northampton Parks and Recreation submitted a CPA application for creation of 6 pickleball courts at Ray Ellerbrook Field, whereas the project meets high priority goals of the Sustainable Northampton Plan, Northampton Community Preservation Plan, and Open Space and Recreation and Multi-Use Trail Plan by creating recreational opportunities for residents of all ages and enhancing quality of life. Whereas pickleball is one of the fastest growing sports in America, and the project has widespread community support. Whereas on November 29, 2023, the Northampton Community Preservation Committee voted unanimously to recommend that $350,000 in Community Preservation Act funds be used to support this project. Sarah, do you have more to add to this?
What can I say about pickleball? Everybody knows about how important pickleball is. So a few years ago, the CPA funded a assessment study to figure out where the rec department would be best served by siting these courts. Ray Ellerbrook Field was the preferred alternative. 6 pickleball courts is what the recreation department is coming forward with. And the CPC heard a tremendous amount of community support for this project. Not only, I like this as a recreational opportunity, it's a fun sport that I enjoy, but stories of how it bridges gaps in different types of communities and generations, and just how important it is. This does not represent the full funding request that the Recreation Department brought forward. They were initially asking for $550,000, which was the entirety of the project. Working with the Recreation Department and the recreation representative on the CPC, they decided to lower that by $200,000 to make use of some fundraising capability in the pickleball community. And that there was a natural break in between the creation of the courts themselves and the amenities that would make sense. So this will allow the courts to actually be built.
Nice.
And they'll be in walking distance from the Laurel Street housing, which is a bonus as well.
Counselor Maori, then Counselor Labarge.
Yeah, I'm very pro pickleball, as you know, because I have a strong pickleball lobby in my ward. But I did want to check, because not here, but in another place, another pickleball court, there was a butter who thought it was very noisy. So I don't know if with the Ray Ellerbrook Field, if that kind of assessment was done, when the field was built, or how close the butters are. And you said the community, I hope the community included people who were close to the fields.
Yeah, I mean, the CPC didn't get into the really detailed discussions about the site selection with the
Right.
Recreation Department because they had their own series of public meetings. But one of the benefits of Ray Ellerbrook Field is that it is much more isolated than some of the other sites that they were looking at.
I can just confirm that there were public meetings and outreach to that neighborhood around this project.
Excellent.
Counselor Labarge.
Yes, I'm going to support this. I mean, this is great. And I know some of the members from the CPC, and I have to agree. They heard from people throughout the city. And I think it's great with the Recreation Department. And also, I'm happy to hear that at least there were meetings with the neighbors around that area.
Any further, oh, go ahead.
Move to refer to the consent agenda.
Second.
Is that Garrick?
It was.
All right, so motion made by Counselor Maori, and we'll get Counselor Perry in on the action there. And so to refer this to the consent agenda, correct?
Yes.
Okay. Any further discussion on referring this to the consent agenda? Hearing none. Those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Okay, that will appear on the consent agenda of our next meeting. And it is time for Counselor Foster to return, if she can hear us out there.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Sarah. Thank you. And thank you to the CPC for all their terrific work. Welcome back.
Thanks for having me.
All right. We are now up to 3.410. In order to appropriate retained earnings to FY24 enterprise capital projects. Okay. I'll still read these. All right. In order to appropriate retained earnings, all right. Ordered that $50,000 be appropriated from the FY 2024 water enterprise retained earnings to the hydrant replacement account for the purchase of hydrants. $130,000 be appropriated from the FY24 Water Enterprise retained earnings to the granular activated carbon account for filtration at the water treatment plant. $800,000 be appropriated from the FY24 Sewer Enterprise retained earnings to the sewer line replacement account for ongoing sewer projects. $160,000 be appropriated from the FY24 could put 20 in there, Solid Waste Enterprise retained earnings to the Solid Waste Landfill Closure Account for ongoing expenses associated with compliance with DEP post-closure requirements, and $250,000 be appropriated from the FY24 Stormwater Enterprise retained earnings to the Drain Replacement Account for ongoing drainage projects. And Mayor, Director Nardi.
DPW. And, yeah, so actually DPW Director
Oh, cool.
Kelly is here as well, but these are, she can walk through any details on them, but these are the retained earnings from those enterprises and what they're then going to be used for, the projects that they'll support.
Okay. And can we get Director LaScalia unmuted? There she is. Are you there?
I am, yeah, good evening, counselors. Thank you. So this is just some transfers to kind of help us with our ongoing operations. You know, we don't run July 1st to June 30th, so we just have ongoing expenses associated with all the enterprise funds. You know, emergency situations that pop up through the winter and our utilities. I'm happy to take any particular questions on any particular transfer, if there are any.
Okay. Did I see a hand? Counselor
Mine
Jarrett.
was more general. So the retained earnings, is that similar to the free, when we get free cash for the general fund? It's things that weren't spent in the previous fiscal year that then now
Yes,
we
that's
are
correct.
appropriating? Okay, thank you.
Move to refer to the consent agenda.
Okay.
Second.
Second, all right. Motion made by Counselor Maori, seconded by Counselor Gore, to put this on the consent agenda. Any discussion on that motion? Okay, hearing none. All in favor of sending this to the consent agenda, say aye. Aye. Any abstentions? Any nays? Okay, that is unanimous. Item 23.410, in order to appropriate retained earnings to FY24 enterprise capital projects, will appear on the consent agenda at our next meeting. All right, next up is item 23.411, in order to appropriate free cash to NPS for foster care transportation reimbursement. And 3, 4, 4, ordered that $43,543 be appropriated from the FY 2024 General Fund Undesignated Fund Balance free cash to Northampton Public Schools to provide the schools with the reimbursement from the Commonwealth, which was received by the city in FY 2023 for the transportation of foster students in FY 2022. Wow, that's a lot of years. Okay.
So this is a transfer that we do every year. So we get reimbursed from the state for students that we provide transportation to. And then we transfer, that comes into the city, and then we transfer that back to Northampton Public Schools.
Any questions, counselors?
I will move to send this to the consent agenda then.
Second.
Okay.
Motion made by Counselor Perry, seconded by Counselor Moulton to put this on the consent agenda at our next meeting. Any further discussion on this motion? Hearing none, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Hearing none, it's unanimous. Item 23.411, in order to appropriate free cash to NPS for foster care transportation reimbursement, will appear on the consent agenda at our next meeting. Next up, item 23.412, in order to appropriate $30,000 in free cash to support senior center transportation program. And item U. In order to appropriate $30,000 in free cash to support senior center transportation program, whereas accessible and affordable transportation services are critical for older adults and provide access to the greater community, and whereas studies have shown that societal participation of older adults reduces mortality rates, reduces cognitive disability, decreases loneliness and depression, and increases physical activity. And whereas, with grant funding, the Senior Center was able to reduce the copay cost and expand transportation services from just medical rides to include rides to places of worship, entertainment, art and culture classes, long-term care communities to visit loved ones, and local restaurants. Whereas participation increased by 305% from 37 round-trip rides per month to 150 round-trip rides per month, and whereas the grant funds that facilitated this expansion were exhausted at the end of November 2023, creating an urgent need for additional funding to continue these vital services through the end of FY 2024, and whereas the Senior Center is actively pursuing all available grant funding opportunities, including a MassDOT grant to ensure the program's sustainability into FY 2025 and beyond, and now, therefore, it be resolved that the sum of $30,000 be appropriated from the FY 2024 General Fund undesignated fund balance, free cash to support the Senior Center Transportation Program.
So
Mayor.
I'm very happy to hand this over to Director Park, who is here, but I just want to share that this is a really wonderful success story about a program that she's been administering, and I'm very happy to support it, and it's just it's a testament to the remarkable work that Director Park's been doing at the Senior Center.
Director Park.
Good evening. I can't see everybody.
You can use the podium if you want. The mayor likes the podium sometimes.
No, I don't know if I like the podium, but I can see you all. Good afternoon, councilors, or good evening, councilors. The order that Councilor Nash read gives a good summary of the program, and in a lot of ways, the numbers are phenomenal and speak for themselves. But what we've seen is certainly the importance of transportation, and not just to medical appointments, and not just to pharmacies, and not just to grocery stores. They're all important too. But what has been incredible has been the stories that we've heard as people have literally taken Cosmic Cab to go see loved ones in nursing homes. They have taken cabs to the Hampshire Regional YMCA because the workouts do them well, both physically as well as mentally. We have seen people go to dinner at Spoleto, go out for a drink at Majestic. It's how people are involved in the community and how they're staying connected with friends, families, and what matters most to them. And that grant money allowed us to expand the use of Cosmic Cab beyond just medical appointments to all of those other things that mean so much to people. And so that's what we would like to continue, is that expansion in service. Certainly, the affordability is a big part of it as well, but we're working hard to find grant funding to continue this, and are hoping that we can have some additional funding in the meantime to assist. I'd be happy to entertain any questions that you have.
Councilor Barber.
Yes, I want to thank you, all your volunteers. I am so happy. I'm hearing from residents in the city and also in Ward 6 of the transportation and so forth. And also, I'd like to ask you, how many residents in the city have you gained ever since you became the new director? I know we talked with you about that during interviewing process, how so many people have left and what you were going to do. Just wondering how you made out with that.
Since in that time, and I don't know exact numbers, I can certainly get them to you, but hundreds of people have returned to the senior center. And that, when I say hundreds, probably 700 to 800 and upwards have come, either people that are new to the senior center, the first time they've been there, or individuals that have not been there for a while for various reasons, including COVID and the building being closed. We have, when I started, we were probably averaging about 100 people a day. We're up to probably closer to 160, 170 at this point. We are back to the point of sometimes hearing we don't have enough parking, which is a good thing and a bad thing. Sorry we don't have more parking, but good to see that many people in the building. So whether they're reaching out to Michelle for social services or coming for an art program, we definitely, it's a vibrant building.
Well, I am hearing that, and I'm very happy to hear what I'm hearing.
Thank you.
And thank you again, and thank all the employees and your volunteers who are helping making it happen.
Thank you very much. Yes.
Counselor Moulton, then Counselor Foster.
Thank you. Yeah, I want to echo what the mayor and Councilor Labarge said. This is, it's a relatively modest amount of money, $30,000, but it's one of the most critical votes we're taking tonight. This is a program that is critical, I believe, for both mental and physical health of seniors. And as you noted, it's allowing them to stay connected with the rest of the community, which is important for seniors, but more important since the pandemic. So I'm tremendously supportive of this. My question is, will 30,000 take you through the rest of the fiscal year?
Possibly. We're hoping so that it does. We are probably running about 5,000 or so a month in terms of costs for Cosmic Cab at this point in time. So it will definitely help get us there, without a doubt.
Okay, well, that sounds very promising, and
Most definitely.
as I said, this is hugely important.
Counselor Foster, then Counselor Moulton.
Just echoing what other counselors have said before me, so I don't need to say much, but it's nice to see financial order that's recognizing the richness of lives far beyond medical appointments and pharmacies. That's huge, and especially as we're in this, like, I got home from work at 4:45 today, and it was pitch dark, and I think about the challenges for people, driving after dark and things like that, and so how this can open up the community. And so my question for you is a little bit twofold. One is this program currently meeting the demand, or can you talk a little bit about, from implementation to where we are now, how that's growing and what you see coming? And I guess the second part of that is Cosmic Cab able to meet that? What are the limiting factors? Is it interest from seniors? Is it funding? Is it capacity from Cosmic Cab to meet the demand? But a little update on that would be great.
Sure. I think the challenge is the funding. What we've seen, partially through the numbers here, you can see that we went from 37 round trips up to 150, about 150 per round trip. Right now, Cosmic Cab is able to meet that demand. Quite frankly, I believe they've increased some of their drivers in order to meet that demand. So we're keeping them very busy, and they are thrilled about that. We want to keep everything affordable, and we continue to offer financial aid for anyone who meets a low-income guideline, and we continue to offer that transportation free if someone does. We will look at, as we move forward, the budgeting. Right now, we are charging $1 per way, so a $2 round trip. What we might look at doing is adjusting that a little bit in order to help funds stretch a little further. I think the biggest need was stretching Cosmic Cab beyond the medical appointments only to the greater community. And that's where we're really hearing, people have to call the senior center to schedule these appointments. So for every ride that's been scheduled, someone on our team has talked to them to schedule that ride. And we hear time after time how helpful that has been. in order to get where people need to go, whether it's an evening, whether it's a weekend, whether it's a Sunday to places of worship, or whether it's to a hospital. That really has been the need that we've repetitively heard from individuals, that it's those types of appointments that people really want individualized service to. PVTA is an option for us as well, but that also then becomes a different experience. Also, the hours limited, so that really is what we hear from individuals, and we'll just kind of strategically look at that between cost and how best we can be, stretch those funds as far as we can, but still meet the need. I hope that answered your question.
Yeah, mostly. I guess the other part of my question is, are there, say, people calling for rides that are not getting them, or is the demand being met?
For the most part, the demand is being met. They are limited to individuals in Northampton, Florence, and Leeds, and we are including where there was some demand that we also, this expansion covered was medical facilities right over the border in Hatfield, as well as East Hampton as well with Valley Medical. So it's been a little bit more challenging outside of that, but this expansion has covered that, and so that has been helpful. Every once in a while, we might get a call where somebody would love to have a ride 5 days a week. Can you get me to work these 5 days a week? And we've had some individual conversations and kind of worked out a balance where we're providing it sometime, but maybe not always, because the funding has been limited. And so I think the only need that we're seeing right now that's not met, that we'll continue to look at avenues, is if someone calls and says they have a medical appointment in Boston, that's the transportation need that we're still working on how best to meet. That's not covered by the Cosmic Cab and what we're talking about right now, but that is one need that we're looking into and trying to find out if there's a way that we can help meet that need for appointments that are further out. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I'm wondering if Cosmic Cab has wheelchair accessible vehicles.
They do not, but they are able to help people get in and out of the cabs, and PVTA would be where we would need to rely on with that, but they can fit a wheelchair, in the trunk, and so there are situations in which that's fine. And Cosmic Cab has been, I will also say this, that they have been tremendous partners in this. I know there's, our social worker met with an individual at an appointment, at which Cosmic Cab, it was raining that day, and the driver literally got out of the cab with an umbrella, walked the individual up to the appointment, and then picked them also back up with an umbrella, walked them back to the car. And so the Cosmic Cab has been tremendous in helping in any way, shape, or form that they can to make it the best experience possible. Mm-hmm.
Councilor Perry.
Thank you. I'm just going to hop in. And again, I think this program is excellent, especially coming out of COVID. Getting people back in the community is very important. My question kind of bounces off of Councilor Foster's, in that, are there thoughts of maybe having a shuttle program or something to maximize the amount of people who could travel to places, or are we just doing individual one-off calls? Is that kind of thing?
With Cosmic Cab, it's individual one-off calls. Our partnership with PVTA does allow more of that setting. The other thing that we're also looking at the viability for is that we also do have a bus, one bus with senior services that we will potentially have on the road for that service, but we're looking, again, weighing all the pros and cons of using that versus Cosmic Cab and PVTA. Cosmic Cab doing evening and weekend hours is providing far beyond really what we would be able to do internally, but we're also weighing that as an option, as a possibility towards that. Mm-hmm.
Councilor Labarge.
Yes, you mentioned something to the effect of taking people to Boston for medical appointments. Are you talking about Mass General and so forth?
That could be one location, yes. Every once in a while, we do get a call from Boston's one example, but maybe also Worcester, so just some places that are further out.
Cooley Dick sets up appointments for residents if they have to go to Mass General or bring them or whatever.
We'll certainly follow up on that. Thank you.
Councilor Jarrett.
Thank you. Yeah, great. I think this is a great program. Has there been any discussion about a more, with the PVTA, about a more generalized on-demand service? I know that the FRTA offers their access program where they, this is for people of all ages, but if you're outside of the fixed route system that they have, then they can accommodate requests. I'm just curious if, I could see this expanding to be something where, the PVTA could connect to their fixed route systems to an on-demand system.
We do set up rides with PVTA now through what they're called the Senior NoHo Shuttle, and that is an appointment-based kind of pickup system there. And there's several people that have used that shuttle in order to come to the senior center, also Cosmic Cab for that purpose. So we do work with them closely, but certainly we'll continue to look at any ways, if there's any ways we can expand with them too.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Counselor Jarrett.
Move to refer to the consent agenda.
Second.
Next meeting.
Okay. Motion made by Counselor Jarrett, seconded by Counselor Labarge to put this on the consent agenda at our next meeting. Any further discussion? I just want to add, as somebody who works with folks who face barriers to being out in the community, that oftentimes that when you're providing the right supports, and just opens up worlds for people. And often it's transportation, and to have the ability to, go to a restaurant, go to a show, go see a loved one, that this is for many of the people that you're serving here, these are the precise supports that they need that allow all of that to happen. And when it's provided so precisely, it's got really great results, and it sounds like you're hearing that. And so, so thank you.
Thank you.
That's my last bite as the council president. So, okay. All right. So, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Okay, that unanimously will appear on the consent agenda at our next meeting. We are now up to 23.413. In order to appropriate $15,000 in free cash for costs associated with filling the Medicaid reimbursement, for filing for Medicaid reimbursement. Be ordered that the sum of $15,000 be appropriated from the FY 2024 General Fund Undesignated Fund Balance free cash to pay costs associated with filing the documents and reports to receive the Medicaid reimbursement. Director Nardi.
Good evening. So this order is, every year, the city receives Medicaid reimbursement. The cost of filing that documentation is done by the Lower Pioneer Valley. Why am I stressing on that? Lower Pioneer Valley. Yep, them. Yeah. Sorry about that. Yeah, don't come to me. So they actually do all the processing. They put together the paperwork and they file it for the city. That's a cost of $15,000 a year. That has been being covered by the school system. And then the city actually takes in the receipt of the reimbursement. So Business Administrator Bobby Jones has asked that the city take on that cost since the city keeps the money. So the mayor has agreed to that. So we are putting this order forward for the $15,000 to cover the cost this year in FY 2024. And then we will incorporate it into the budget starting in FY 2025.
Councilor Foster, then Councilor Jarrett.
To the Lower Pioneer Valley Educational Collaborative.
Yeah, that's it. Thank you.
You're welcome. Just came.
Thank you. LPEC, what is it, LPVEC?
No, something
together. Got it. Thank you.
Councilor Jarrett.
So what does this reimburse for?
Medicaid, there are certain students that they're eligible for, the services that certain students receive are eligible for Medicaid reimbursement.
Great, thank you.
Okay, councilors, any more questions, any more discussion? I will entertain a motion.
I'll make a motion to move this to the consent agenda.
Second.
Yes.
So Perry's using his video voice.
I thought it was
Motion made by Counselor Perry, seconded by Counselor Foster to put this on the consent agenda at our next meeting. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions? Okay, that passes unanimously to appear on the consent agenda at our next meeting. Next up is 23.414. Where are you? In order to appropriate $3.19 million free cash to various reserve accounts. Be ordered that $3,192,508 be appropriated from the FY24 General Fund undesignated fund balance free cash to the following accounts. All of these accounts are getting the same amount of money, $798,000 and $798 and $127. Why am I reading that wrong? Going to the Capital Stabilization Fund, Climate Mitigation Stabilization Fund, Fiscal Stability Stabilization Fund, and the Stabilization Fund. There's a lot of stabilization going on there. Mayor, do you want to speak to this and what we're up to here?
Sure, I'm happy to speak to our stability. Per our policy, we divide the undesignated fund balance into thirds. So 1/3 remains for any needs throughout the year for unexpected expenses. 1/3 goes towards capital projects, and then 1/3 is split among the reserves. As you know from the FY23 fourth quarter report, we had a strong rebound and took in funds above our cautiously projected revenues for FY23. Coming out of the pandemic for a couple years, we just really weren't sure where things were going to rebound, but we're happy to say that we have rebounded well here in Northampton. Our undesignated fund balance comes from exceeding revenue projections, as well as any judgments the city may have received, and interest and investments, such as interest earnings on ARPA funds, the ARPA lost revenue that we had. And we've had strong interest rates the last year or so that's helped investments. And we also had turnbacks. So as you know, we've had some continued vacancies, which reduces the use of employee benefits, has delayed some projects, and also, of course, creates turnbacks in PS salary lines. So this is the undesignated fund balance being divided into those reserves.
Thank you. Councilor Jarrett.
And how did you decide that they should go in 4 equal pieces?
So before we had the Climate Mitigation Stabilization Fund, they went into 3 equal pieces. And we haven't necessarily established a firm policy yet on whether climate's always going to get a quarter, and that'll be divided in 4 equal ways. But as you know, we have a lot of upcoming projects and things that we're looking at in terms of trying to meet our climate goals. So since we'd had a strong year in terms of rebound, we decided this year that we would divide it in four ways.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Just to say, I called on myself.
Go ahead. I'll call on you since you called.
I just want to thank Director Nardi again, because she explained this at our budget listening session, and I think it was really, good information to the residents who joined us, so thank you.
Why did I lose it here? There it is. Since nobody else is speaking, I'll just go. So our stability funds, which have kept us in good stead over the last decade, that have allowed us to do. So prior to having all of these stability funds, and Councilor Labarge will remember this from the early 2000s, the fiscal chaos and hardship that was going on in Northampton. There was a point where that our reserves were down to, Mayor, was it like $50,000 for the entire city? I'm sure Mayor Narkowitz.
Terrifying.
But
Terrifyingly low.
imagine that all of the money that the city had was like $50,000, and that we are now sitting with these reserves that allow us to do, capital projects across the city. If a building needs a new furnace, we have the funds to make that happen. That we have the stability plan that we rely on every year, that we've chosen to reimburse every 4 or 5 years, hopefully 5 years. But that has allowed us to to have positive discussions for all of our departments, that departments are making decisions on, that we're buying vehicles for different departments based on the way vehicles actually age out, and not just running everything into the ground. We're making plans around the way we hire staff, and that we've for over 10 years we've avoided the constant talk of laying people off every year, and that was the case back in the early 2000s. And so that, us taking our reserves every year and, piling them back into, basically our savings accounts that allow us to have the stability for capital and for, and for staffing with that fiscal stability fund, it's been a godsend, and that I just want to say it's a good thing, and we should keep doing this. Although I won't be on council next year, I advise everybody to keep doing that. I don't know, maybe Councilor Labarge just wants to maybe fill everybody in on what it was like back in those years. Councilor.
Yes. Thank you, Councilor Nash. What he talked about was facts. There's no question about it. I'm not quite sure if it was 50,000 or maybe a little bit higher than that. Would you know, Mayor?
We're looking at what we have. The closest thing we can find here was that it may have been close to like $250,000, but that was the entire reserves.
Right. And if I can recall, the schools, because of the tremendous layoffs that you were talking about, actually affected the care of our buildings of the schools. They came to a point of being very deplorable. And it cost us more money to go ahead and refurbish those schools back again. So what we're doing now and what the mayors have been doing has got us right on the right track. I haven't seen too many layoffs since then. Some, yes, but not like what we went through. It was bad.
Councilor Moulton.
Yeah, and I'll just offer my own editorial comment. We get email from our constituents asking us to exercise fiscal responsibility. Well, in my opinion, this is one way of doing that, a very important way of doing that. Offering stability that allows us to meet emergencies, allows us to maintain an excellent bond rating that reduces the interest we pay when we have to borrow. So this, in my mind, this is certainly a practice that we've seen eliminate the financial chaos that we remember, but also going forward, makes it a much easier road as we deal with unexpected expenses.
Can I just say one?
Mayor?
So one thing Yes, thank you, everyone, for saying that. One thing that I just sort of want to make an additional point about is, so back, 10 years ago, when we were down to almost no reserves, we didn't have a capital stabilization fund. So there was no way to do planned capital projects.
That's right.
So, if a boiler broke, then you would have to you would have to use the free cash that you had available to deal with that emergency. There was no way to make do planned maintenance. And so, a lot of our capital projects are still trying to deal with that deferred maintenance for decades. So that's, it's incredibly, this is what allows us to have the capital improvement plan that we have, and to not only deal with the regular maintenance and the deferred maintenance, but also to think about what we want to see as a community in terms of the direction we want to go in, and is allowing us to think about how we can become a carbon neutral city.
Okay, we have 3.9 million in free cash, or undes. What?
3.19 million.
19 million, yeah. We can put this on the consent agenda or send it to finance.
First, I'd like to make a motion to send it to the consent agenda.
I'll second that then.
Okay, motion made by Councilor Labarge, seconded by Councilor Perry, to place this item on the consent agenda at our next meeting. Any discussion on that?
Just a brief one. I just wanted to check in, Councilor Maori, as the chair of the Finance Committee, just because this is a larger sum of money than some of the others we've been talking about. Yeah.
I appreciate that, and the vice chair and I both think that this, because it is a routine that we do every year, that we're comfortable with it going to the consent agenda. And, but thank you for asking, because, I had that was definitely on my radar, and, but because of the routine nature of how we do it, I'm comfortable with it. Thanks.
Councilor Jarrett.
We'll also note that we're not spending 3.19 million. We're moving it to particular reserve accounts where it can then be brought out to be spent later. And there will have to be an order to do that in the future.
Thank you. Okay, we have a motion on the floor. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor, say aye to place this on the consent agenda.
Aye.
Aye. Any nays? Any abstentions? Okay, hearing none of those, this unanimously is placed on the consent agenda at our next meeting. Next up is item 23.415. In order to appropriate free cash to NPS for McKinney-Vento transportation reimbursement. Be ordered that $84,966 be appropriated from the FY 2024 General Fund undesignated fund balance free cash to Northampton Public Schools to provide the schools with the reimbursement from the Commonwealth which was received by the city in 2023 for the transportation of homeless students in 2022, such reimbursement being known as the McKinney-Vento transportation reimbursement. This is very similar to the order before that had to do with foster children. And is there any more?
No, this is something that we do annually as well, and it's similar to the other transfer of transportation funds for the transportation of students in foster care. This is for the transportation of homeless students. So we receive that reimbursement from the Commonwealth, and then we pass it on to MPS.
And it takes a while to get it. This is, so services in 2022.
We received the funds, so it's from the work from the transportation of students in FY 2022, and we received the reimbursement in June of 2023. So you're always a year behind. But that gives the opportunity, in 2023, they were actually filing all the paperwork that goes along with that.
Okay. Any other questions on this? I will entertain a motion.
I'll move to refer to the consent agenda.
Second.
Motion made by Counselor Moulton, seconded by Counselor Perry to put this item on the consent agenda. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions? That passes unanimously by those present. And that will, item 23.415 will appear on the consent agenda of our next meeting. Next up is item 23.416, in order to authorize borrowing $2 million for paving projects. Let's see. Ordered that the sum of $2 million is appropriated to pay costs of roadway engineering, design, and reconstruction, including all costs incidental and related thereto, that to meet this appropriation, the treasurer, with the approval of the mayor, is authorized to borrow said amount under Chapter 44, Section 7(1) of the general laws, or pursuant to any other enabling authority, and to issue bonds or notes of the city therefore, and that the mayor is authorized to take any action necessary or convenient to carry out this project. Mayor.
Okay, so we have a bunch of exciting projects that we're planning, and I'm going to kind of run through them quickly, and then Director Lascalia is here. And as you picture them, we are mindful that there are some traffic calming requests for some of these areas, so we're considering options to address problem areas as we finalize our plans. But this is the list. So North Main Street at Bridge Road, at the Bridge Road roundabout, and the approaches into the roundabout. So that's upgrading crosswalk markings and crosswalk signs, and painting shared lane markings at the roundabout. Then Spring Street from Meadow Street to La Valley Lane, that's upgrading curb ramps and reconstructing the sidewalk on the west side, and this will complete the work in that corridor. Next, we have Loudville Road from West Hampton Road to 222 feet south. That work will also complete that corridor. North Elm Street from Bridge Road to Locust Street, that's reconstructing the sidewalk between the rail trail crossing at Locust, and constructing curb ramps at Pilgrim Drive and Dickinson Street. Next is North Maple from Bridge Road to High Street, that's sidewalk repair where needed and creating sharrows. Then Chestnut Street from Bridge Road to High Street, reconstructing the sidewalk, upgrading curb ramps at High Street and Bridge Road, painting crosswalks and stop bars on High Street, and creating sharrows. I just want to note that in particular, Councilor Labarge can tell you this is this area is a section that the Disability Commission has been concerned about and talking about a bit on their agenda. The sidewalk there and the condition that it's in, and that there is someone in a wheelchair there who has struggled at that spot.
Mayor, you just said that's on Chestnut Street?
Chestnut Street, yes.
Okay.
Then we have Dana Street, upgrading curb ramps and painting a crosswalk. Bird's Pit Road from Clement Street to almost 2,000 feet east. And then we're doing a significant sidewalk project from the sidewalk inventory. So this is North Main Street sidewalk resurfacing from Park Street to Bridge Road. And then additionally, we're repaving the bike path from Stop and Shop to Look Park. That's a big job. I think we've talked about this before. It hasn't had work done, and Director Lascalia can tell me exactly, it's 30 or 40 years. It's a very long time. We're addressing that, and while doing that, we'll address drainage issues at Adair Place that have been a problem for quite a while. And so that's that exciting list.
Yes, Mayor, at some point, I wish you would, Councilor Jarrett and I, and Keith Benoit, for over 15 years, we have been requesting with Florence Heights, coming down that big hill. It is not ADA accessible at all. It's deplorable. And it's affecting the quality of life of many people with disabilities, from even over on Brookwood. Some of them are deaf, whatever, with their disabilities. I can't understand how come after all these years, nothing is being done for the quality of life of those residents.
Thank you, Councilor Labarge, for reminding me of that project.
Thank you.
Counselor Maori.
So what's the timeframe? Is it just different timeframes for each project? Or is it kind of like a, maybe that's a question for the director.
I'll turn it over to Director LaSalia.
Yeah, so, hi, Director, good evening. I was just wondering about the kind of time frame because I think residents, that's usually their first or second question. When is that going to happen?
Yeah, so we're working in a very difficult bid climate. The prices of everything, as we know, are sort of exponentially rising. So the goal here is to get this out to bid in January. And I would like to see a mobilization into the city like we are your first stop. So, end of April, early May. And I'd like to see this, wrapped up in early summer instead of late fall. So my hope is that by getting, this order out now and the authorization now, it will allow us to execute a contract earlier and kind of be first on everybody's list and get more favorable bid pricing. So I think residents can expect a very early mobilization this year.
Okay, thank you.
Counselor Jarrett.
Thank you. Great, thank you for supplying that list. It really covers a lot of the areas that we've been thinking about, that I've been hearing from my residents. I'm very excited about many of these. And I will just second Councilor Labarge's concern about the access for my residents at Florence Heights, being able to get down to Florence Center, and that is a tough, crumbling, are you in the road or are you on the sidewalk area? So whenever that can happen, it would be great.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Counselor Labarge.
Yes, and I just want to say thank you, Donna, for working on the speed sign now at 30 miles an hour over on Florence Road. Both Councilor Jarrett and I and our residents appreciate that.
Thank you, Councilor. Just one thing to note on these projects, we do have a complete streets ordinance that we have to adhere to that sort of talks about the various roadway treatments that we have to do and how we treat sidewalks when we come in to either reclaim or mill and overlay a street. Sidewalks are often challenging for us as there can be conflict with utility poles and right-of-way constraints and sort of making street trees. So making accessible sidewalks is one of our biggest challenges when we come through and do any roadway project. The Complete Streets Ordinance does require concrete sidewalks on both sides of the road in certain locations in the city. And if you were to sort of overlay zoning districts as described in the Complete Streets Ordinance, on many of these streets that the mayor listed, it is a local requirement that we install concrete sidewalks on both sides of the street. Unless there is discussion of the Transportation and Parking Commission, whereby exception to that is voted on and approved. So I just want to notify the councilors that at the next CPC meeting, which will be coming up towards holiday time, towards the end of the month, there will be an agenda item to have a more substantial discussion about certain streets and why we are not able to install sidewalks on both sides of the street. We have right-of-way constraints, which means we would have to do eminent domain takings in order to install sidewalks on both sides of the street, which would sort of grind all of our projects to a halt and not necessarily be popular. So there will be a more substantial discussion of this coming up at the next meeting.
And when is that next TPC meeting?
I believe it's
Next Tuesday?
check my calendar. Yeah, the 19th, December 19th. It starts at 4 o'clock.
Thank you. Okay. Any questions, counselors? Any thoughts to make a motion on this? Counselor Jarrett?
I move to refer this to the consent agenda of our next meeting.
Second.
I'm going to go with Counselor Perry. Motion made by Counselor Jarrett, seconded by Counselor Perry to put this on the consent agenda at our next meeting. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor, say aye.
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 Any opposed? Any abstaining? Hearing none of those, it's unanimous. Order 23.416, in order to authorize borrowing of $2 million for paving projects, will appear on the consent agenda of our next meeting. We have completed the financial orders, and I'm going to suggest that we take a 10-minute break. And we will be back at 8:57. Okay, I think we just got the countdown and we're back live, Council. We just got the countdown and we're back live. And we have, I believe, 3 more items on our agenda here. We have, this is an order that's in second reading. We discussed it last time. It's item 23.396, an order authorizing acquisition of a parcel of land located on Florence Road. This was introduced and discussed, no vote taken at our November 16th meeting. Councilor Labarge also shared a lot of detail and some really wonderful stories about this particular property, having to do with it's the site of where a military plane crashed, and there's a memorial at the site. And so this item is up tonight. Let me see if there's something to read about.
396.
All right, I'll read this since we have till 10. Whereas on April 19, 2001, the city accepted a deed from Ravenwood Farm, Inc., relative to a parcel of land containing 2,343 square feet, more or less, located on Florence Road, whereas the parcel of land is shown on a plan entitled Revised Plan of Land, Northampton, Mass., prepared for the C-54 Memorial, dated April 24, 2000, and recorded in the Hampshire Registry of Deeds, whereas the parcel deeded by Ravenwood Farm to the city has been used for a memorial honoring 3 Army Air Corps aviators, and whereas the deed accepted from Ravenwood Farm was subject to certain mortgages granted by Ravenwood Farm to the Farm Service Agency, U.S. Department of Agriculture, and whereas in 2005, subsequent to the deed from Ravenwood Farm to the city, the Farm Service Agency foreclosed on the mortgages it held and sold the property, including the city parcel, to Paul Duga, Jr., and whereas the foreclosure by the Farm Service Agency caused the city to lose title to the parcel, and whereas Mr. Duga is now deceased and the title of the property is held by the estate of Duga, whereas the heirs and representatives of the estate of Duga propose a reconvey, did I say that right?
Reconvey?
Reconvey, the parcel to the city as a gift for nominal consideration, thereby revesting the title in the city. Now, therefore, it be ordered, the city council hereby authorizes the mayor to accept a deed from the estate of Duga relative to the parcel of land identified above on such terms and conditions that the mayor deems advisable. The mayor is further authorized to execute such documents and instruments as may be necessary to acquire the parcel. No appropriation is needed, as the conveyance is a gift for nominal consideration. And so this has to do with a parcel of land on Florence Road. It has a memorial for the site of 3 service members who died in a plane crash. Councilor Jarrett.
I will move approval of this order.
I'll second it.
Motion made by Councilor Jarrett and appropriately seconded by Councilor Labarge for the work she did on this project. This is, do we need to do a voice vote? Can we do a voice vote on this?
I don't know.
Technically, we can do a voice vote because there's no appropriation.
Okay. So,
That's correct.
any discussion on this motion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions? Okay, that has been approved. Item 23.396, an order authorizing acquisition of a parcel of land located on Florence Road has been approved. unanimously by all present because Counselor Elkins is not with us this evening. Next up is item 23.401, possible changes to Rule 4.8, public comment. So, where to start here? So, back on, what was it, at our special meeting, Counselor Foster and I introduced some language to add some strength to the rules around public comment, to give the presiding officer a little more latitude over how to handle disruptions of the meeting, and particularly around speech that was hard for people to hear. And I'm saying that because Attorney Seawald advised us to not use the word hate speech. And that, and what Counselor Foster and I would like to do is to just kind of like do a reintroduction of that, and then we will talk about the changes. We heard the changes that were recommended at Legislative Matters, and we've incorporated those ideas into a draft that is also, that is listed under this, what do we call it here? Oh, that's the older version of the...
The post
It's
What was that, Laura?
it's the post-LM version, post-legislative matters.
Okay.
It's the one with their changes.
And that, and Counselor Foster and I would also then like to make some suggestions to that. So first of all, we have two versions here, all right? We have the version that was presented to council, and then we referred it to Legislative Matters, and we now have that version before us as well. That council needs to decide which version we're going to move forward with here. We have recommendations from Legislative Matters, and I actually voted on some of those recommendations. So I think we need to make that step clear. And so before we do that, Counselor Foster and I would just like to walk through the ideas that that we presented, and that with the revisions we're also letting go of. Does that sound right? Mm-hmm. Okay. Do you want to give it a stab, or should I just keep going?
You know what, Counselor Nash, you are on a roll.
Okay, I'm on a roll. All right. All right. So here, let's pull up, if you could pull up your bullet points.
Yes.
I think, pull up the bullet points, because I think that, so we were conflicted at one point because the document that we sent, that we presented to council it's all language, but the discussion we had was like, oh, we want to change this point, and that, these different aspects of what we were proposing, within the rule changes. And so Counselor Foster and I were working on, well, maybe we'll submit another document that kind of has the point by point, so we can just go through and check things off, which was kind of the discussion that Counselor Jarrett was leading as we were working our way through the recommended language. So, all right, so let's speak to the bullets.
So the first one was the idea that public comment is limited to matters on the meeting agenda. At the discretion of the presiding officer, a commenter's time may be reduced if their comment is not relevant to the meeting's agenda. So that was the first one, and that one received a unanimous negative recommendation from Legislative Matters.
Can that go up on the screen?
Yes, it could. Thank you, Councilor Labarge.
And we're going to walk through it point by point, because I think it's easier for us to discuss the ideas and the changes, and then we can go back to the actual language which you see attached in the agenda here.
Okay. Wait a minute, I just minimized it, hang on. I had it.
It's okay.
Okay.
We got till 10.
Oh, yeah, we've got till 10. All right, talk amongst yourselves.
If it's a problem, Karen, don't worry.
No, it wasn't. I had it, and then my pinky hit a button, and I don't know which button it was, and so now we just have to reload it.
At least it wasn't the unmute button.
Thank you, Counselor Perry. I am weeks ahead right now. Oh, jeez. And the internet is very slow at the moment. There we go. Okay.
It wants Counselor Jarrett to lose his cookie back.
All right, my pinky is now going to behave, and this will not happen again. All right, so number 1, the first bullet, public comment is limited to matters on the meeting agenda. At the discretion of the presiding officer, a commenter's time may be reduced if their comment is not relevant to the meeting's agenda. And that one received the unanimous negative recommendation from Legislative Matters. The second point was individuals wishing to speak at public comment must sign up through the link embedded on the meeting's agenda no later than 1 hour in advance of the meeting. And this one was changed. Legislative Matters voted on this 3-1. Counselor Jarrett opposed it. But this part that was highlighted was changed to at the beginning of the meeting. So the idea that individuals would need to sign up by the beginning of the meeting. The third one, no person shall speak during public comment unless recognized by the presiding officer. During the public comment period, those wishing to speak will be recognized in the order in which they signed up by the presiding officer and shall state their name and city or town of residence prior to making their comment. And this one was already part of the rules, and so no action was discussed or taken. That wasn't a change. Number 4, during the public comment period, counselors will not respond to any comment from the public. This was a positive recommendation from Legislative Matters. It just cleared up the language that was in our rules that said we don't respond to any comment during public comment, and this just added the during the public comment period clause to make it clear, like, we could say something later in the meeting if we wanted to. And then the last one, at their discretion and if time allows, after all who signed up ahead of time have spoken, the presiding officer may offer those physically present in the room a chance to make a public comment. And this one received a negative recommendation from Legislative Matters. Right, a full negative recommendation. I had to leave that meeting slightly early. Okay, so those were the different points. How'd I do there?
I think it was 3-1 with me opposed.
Yes, it was.
Thank you. Okay.
Well, we can change that, right?
It's 3-1,
Split vote.
split vote.
So you can see why we wanted to present this as a possible way to discuss this, because it kind of lays out all of the different changes that were made, but it also wasn't true to the original language that we put out to council, so it seemed kind of unfair to then switch out. So I'm going to read.
Do you want me to I can stop sharing now and come back to this if we need it.
Cool.
Yeah.
Okay, so the way, with the changes from LM in this document, members of the public may address the council in all council committees on any matter for up to 2 minutes. I'm trying to make sure I have this right. Public comment may be accepted for no more than 90 minutes total for each meeting. Whenever language translation is required for a member of the public to address the city council, such person shall be provided 4 minutes. Individuals wishing to speak at public comment must sign up through the link embedded in the meeting's agenda by the start of the meeting. During the public comment period, those individuals wishing to speak will be recognized in the order in which they signed up by the presiding officer and shall state their name and city or town of residence and, optionally, their address prior to making their comment. No person shall speak during public comment unless recognized by the presiding officer. During public comment, councilors will not respond to any comments from the public. The city council will take public comment in person or by remote participation as technology allows. And then you can see that the whole, that whole last few lines were deleted about the chair having discretion to allow people to sign up. So, folks from LM, and I'll just, why don't I ask the chair, does that seem to reflect the decisions made by LM with those changes in it?
Yes, though I'd note two things. One is in the first sentence, the word "on" is missing.
Yes.
So it should, that's really just a Scrivener's error, I think. Members of the public may address the council and all council committees on any matter for a period of up to 2 minutes. So we could probably just fix that one without a vote. The second is that I think it wasn't our intention to have people who were coming here in person to have to sign up through the link embedded in the meeting's agenda, but as written, that it's clear that you would have to do that.
Right, and that is the notes that Councilor Foster and I are going to, that's something we're going to next explore. But do you feel like this reflects the changes that, the recommendations from legislative matters?
With that note, that it certainly was our, I think, our intention that you would need to sign up through the link embedded on the meeting's agenda if you're signing up. So it could read, individuals wishing to speak at public comment by remote participation must sign up through the link embedded on the meeting's agenda. I think that would reflect at least the discussion that we had. I'm not sure if that ended up in the actual votes that we took.
Okay. So, which brings me to our last version. So, all right, I'm going to try to screen share this. I'll do this. Sure. Okay, and let's see. See if I can enlarge this. Can people see that? Not really, right?
No, if you change the view away from editing to, oh, look at that. Technical support right here. Role of the vice president.
Thank you, Karen.
You're welcome. Now it's going to get, now we just have to zoom.
There we go.
That should be better.
Okay. All right, so, once we incorporated the recommendations from legislative matters, Councilor Foster and I met over coffee this morning, and we're just like, all right, there's a few things that we want to make sure, we saw a few issues in the language, and also there's a few things that we wanted to make sure council knew they were voting on within this language. I'm going to just walk through them as they appear here. Members of the public may address the council and all council committees. So what we're talking about is public comment for all of our committees. And this is existing language in our rules. And that, so whatever we're talking about, if we're talking about 2 minutes for public comment for the council meetings, it also applies to public comment for all of the committee meetings. Just to, Councilor Jarrett.
Just a question, that, you're referring to the public comment section for items not on the agenda, that's at the beginning of,
Exactly.
Okay.
Yes.
right. Not, the chairs would have discretion to recognize people during the items.
Exactly. Right. And that's where the chair also has the authority to discern if somebody's on topic or off topic. And whereas during public comment, we don't have that authority. Okay. In council committees, on any matter for a period of up to 2 minutes. The up to was something that Councilor Foster and I inserted. I don't think it actually got voted on or people actually recognized that addition. Then we struck, this period may be extended or reduced at the discretion of the presiding officer. And that's actually an important piece that that strike through. We didn't talk about that at either as a group or as it legislative matters. And I think we need to figure out how we want to handle that. In fact, why don't we just talk about that right now? This is existing language. And that our recommendation is to strike through that and eliminate that piece based on the opinion we got from Attorney Seawald, that once you start, if we're letting people speak to anything, any matter, that we don't want to have the chairs messing with the prescribed time for for public comment, because if you change it from meeting to meeting, it starts to, like, oh, it looks like Attorney Seawald kind of said, well, it looks like a good group tonight. We don't have to worry what's going to be said, so let's give everybody 3 minutes. That his recommendation is that you keep it the same, across council and the and your committees.
Makes sense.
Councilor Jarrett, then Councilor Maori.
What about the total length of comment? Because I'm thinking in a committee meeting, you might have a meeting you're hoping is going to be an hour, and people show up and there's 90 minutes of public comment. You might not want to accept that full amount of time or be able to, and it's not about who's showing up, it's about what you have on your agenda.
Right.
So I'm not sure if that's addressed here. All it says is public comment may be accepted for no more than 90 minutes total for each meeting. This period may be extended or reduced, seem to be referring to the amount of minutes each person got. So maybe a chair could still say, we're going to do 10 minutes of public comment at this committee meeting, and that would be okay, just because we have so much on our agenda.
Councilor Foster. Okay.
Maybe. So, Councilor Jarrett, I hear what you're saying, and it's tricky. It was as we were really reading these rules this morning and saw how they refer to committees as well. I wonder if we should move that sentence to after the one that comes after it. So if it were to read, public comment may be accepted for no more than 90 minutes total for each meeting, and then insert a clause, during council committee meetings, this period may be extended or reduced at the discretion of the presiding officer. Some, like to get at that granular thing, because I get what you're saying. The committee meetings don't have the free-flowing time.
So, so we're the sponsors, do we,
Can we hear from Counselor Maori?
yes, go ahead.
Yeah, no, I appreciate that because, I'm just a little torn here. I hear what the solicitor's saying, but part of why we have committees is to have that latitude and that freedom, and I think we really utilize it well. I feel like on Finance Committee with our budget listing sessions, when we had 3 minutes or are able to kind of respond to the needs of residents who are there to chime in. I appreciate that. I mean, I understand there might be more at stake, but I'm a little concerned about taking too much latitude away from the chairs. So I think what I would support that amendment that you said. And we can get this later, but I also, not that you have to accept it, but I did make a suggestion about the 4 minutes also including people with speech disabilities. Yeah.
So to your point, I actually, we're in agreement that we're speaking only to public comment. So if it's for matters before the committee, the chair has the discretion of, like, oh, there's a lot of people in the room, it's gonna be 2 minutes, because they're speaking to the topic that's before them. So chairs still have the latitude to do all of that. It's just that open-ended, where it's just for public comment.
That's a very helpful clarification. Thank you. I was grouping them up. I think that makes a lot of sense.
Counselor Foster.
The only thing is that distinction doesn't address Counselor Jarrett's concern of, and I've been in that role where you have a committee meeting and maybe you have, the people who are there to speak to whatever topic has been referred to committee, and you have to manage public comments so that you're taking advantage of the people who are there to speak in the committee or to the topic. So, so it's true that this would apply just to the public comment before the committee meeting gets down to its business, or the chair has the discretion to move public comment later in the meeting, but you could still be there for a period of 90 minutes after a committee meeting. That's a long time.
So the suggestion is to keep this line, this period may be extended or reduced, and place it after the sentence for no more than 90 minutes total for each meeting, and with the ad that it's referencing committee meetings.
Would it be possible
live
for one of you to, sorry,
Yeah.
I just spoke.
Just gonna take the laptop.
Counselor Jarrett.
Yeah, I was going to suggest, could you edit it now so that we can see it up on the screen?
Can I edit it? What's happened? Oh, we're in viewing mode. Hang on.
Oh, you're editing the Zoom rather than the document.
Well, no, it was like viewing, so I wasn't able to do
Oh.
anything. Okay.
I have a question,
Sure.
but that can wait, though. Oh, thank you. But I thought I'd take advantage of this.
Go ahead. Lag time.
When you talk to, in your conversations with Solicitor Seawald, is the possibility of withholding passcodes until the day of the meeting? Is that a legal possibility? I forgot, where were we
That-
talking about that? And someone said that had been used in a community really effectively, because sometimes there's blasts to not nice groups.
Right. Yeah, and so
Ahead of
that is
time.
one of the recommendations, and we could work on that with Laura to generate
Yeah.
new meeting codes and passcodes. And for the longest time, we used the same
Right.
meeting code, so.
But maybe that doesn't need to be part of this, right?
Yeah, that's
Right,
something
okay,
that-
that's another thing, but
Right.
he didn't have a problem with it.
You're talking about the meeting IDs and the password?
Yeah.
That's, as long as it's posted on the agenda, if the agenda is posted properly and people are able to pull it up and, access the meeting, That's all fine.
Yeah.
Okay. Did we make that change?
We made that change and also added in Counselor Maori's recommendation, or in the case of an individual with a speech-related disability.
Oh,
So those two things are there now.
okay.
Here, you can have your computer back.
All right. I think we're actually going to get through this tonight. Okay. The other things, individuals, and this speaks to what Counselor Jarrett was talking about earlier, individuals wishing to speak at public comment must sign up through the link embedded on the meeting's agenda, or, this is an ad, on the sign-up sheet at the podium in council chamber.
Right, that's what they do.
So, and so that's an ad that we're suggesting for tonight, and that, and it came out of LM by the start of the meeting. And the one thing that Councilor Foster and I feel that, that the recommendation came out of LM for the start of the meeting, and talking about it this morning, we're thinking it should be the start of public comment. And I mean, it's easy to manage the sign-up sheet here in the room. I can say to everybody in the room, what's clear is that the idea that there's a deadline, that the sign-up stops at the start of public comment, so either remote or in the room, whoever's presiding can say, everybody in the room, this is your last call, please sign up, and then that's the list we're going to use for public comment, and you can do it, the announcement to the folks signing up remotely as well. The idea is there's going to be some sort of Google sheet, and people are signing in, and it's time-stamped, and then the presiding officer is looking at either that sheet or the sheet that's, the virtual sheet, and but the thing I like about it is that it gives the presiding officer time to just remind everybody how this works. And that, if you're here in the room or you're here remotely, here's where you can go. And I think it takes some of that feeling away some of that feeling like we're excluding people. No, what it's saying is, we have just a little bit of accountability, and it also adds order to the meeting of, like, now the presiding officer can say, oh, I've got 10 people for public comment, or I've got 30, and you can start to calculate in your head, like, well, I'm going to want to move up that item so Director Nardi doesn't have to stay here till midnight. And anyway. So our recommendation would change it by the start of the meeting, but the start of public comment. Those are our recommendations. That's the draft we'd like to present tonight, is those recommendations, and you guys can all have at it. So we've actually walked through a number of these things on, what do people think of on the sign-up sheet at the podium at council, in council chambers? Are people good with that ad? Councilor Moulton?
Yes, but speaking to Councilor Jarrett's point that he made earlier, I read this as now allowing people who want to address us here in chambers, they may choose to sign up remotely, or they may come and use the sign-up sheet on the podium. Is that your intent?
Well, I imagine they could do that if somebody wanted to sign up remotely, and then the officer, I call their name and they're here rather than in the Zoom. They have their 2 minutes to speak.
Okay, I just wanted to make sure that was your intent.
Councilor Jarrett.
So I really like this new version. However, I think we need to discuss the barrier of having to sign up on a form, and the inability to decide after, kind of in the middle of public comment, the inability to be inspired, as often happens, for someone, whether they're in person or remote, to then speak their mind at this session. And I just want to remind you all that we're basing this, I know we're basing this on the many stories that we've heard from many, from around the state and around the country about what can happen. But all that's happened to us is it 7 minutes or 9 minutes or something like that, plus 2 committee meetings. So I am still pretty wary, since we're not seeing a repeated pattern of this behavior, I'm still pretty wary of limiting and thereby increasing the barriers to public participation. I think it's really good that we have this language ready to go, and that if well, I mean, it would take a council meeting or a special council meeting to get it in place. But if we start seeing a pattern and we have, a really terrible night, we could decide, okay, we're gonna do that. We're gonna see if it solves the problem going forward. But we're not seeing that pattern right now. We've had several meetings of great public comment, or minimal, or extensive, or I guess we've had 2. This one and the previous. So that's my concern, is I don't feel comfortable with that particular part of it. These other parts seem great, but that's where I'm at with the requiring the sign up ahead of time.
Councilor Foster.
It's funny, Councilor Jarrett, because Councilor Nash and I actually sort of talked about this morning as well. I'll speak just for myself, but this, in 2 weeks, this is not my council. So, not that it's mine anyway, but, I'm very happy to sort of, as one of the sponsors, my own role, to have the language here available should a future council choose to enact it. Because we do have, as we've talked about, options for, do we release the passcode on the same day? And depending on open meeting law, I don't know if that has to be 48 hours in advance or not, but there's that option. I may have invited a number of people to our last council meeting to be present at public comment, to either speak, to other things, or, to help take up time should that be needed. There are ways, that things can be addressed. So I just wanted to say, as one of the sponsors, I don't have an attachment to this language being passed tonight. It's something that could be ready to go if a future council or at a future date chose to enact it. The research has been done with Cambridge. We know the technology. We've done the work with Attorney Seawald, and it could be implemented relatively quickly.
Yeah, and I'll recognize myself. I saw myself raise my hand. And, Karen and I, Councilor Foster and I, we're in the same place, that, that we've suggested this change to council, and that it's if it's only an exercise, then it's okay. If that the sign-up sheet did come out of legislative matters with a positive recommendation, that's why we continued to work on that, and that I'll say this, that the sign-up sheet is something we've always implemented.
Always been here.
And that people, on the sign-up sheet, they provide not only their name, but their address, and just some basic contact information. And that one of the things that kept coming up through all of this discussion is to mirror remotely what we do in person. And if we're doing the sign-up sheet here, that with that ask, that we could do the same for folks signing up remotely. And that seemed to be a fair equation. And that it people can still make up stuff about where they live and their address and stuff remotely. They can do it right here.
Yes, they can.
But it just, something about a little bit of, ownership in who you are before you speak is kind of what we're looking for. It may not solve the problem, and you guys may just determine that, tonight we'll just put this on hold, and that it'll be in our toolbox for when we need it in the future. But I just wanted to say that, just that the sign-up sheet is something we've always done, and to mirror that remotely just may add a little bit of accountability. Councilor Foster, then Councilor Labarge. Oh, and then Jared.
Very quick. The one thing I wanted to say about a Google form or some kind of sign up is that it can capture an IP address. So it can do a couple of things. One, it does reduce the anonymity because it gives an approximate geographical location. But the other thing that we've seen is one strategy is to log out with one name, log back in with a new name, make another public comment, and all of a sudden, if you're seeing a pattern of 5 or 6 matching IP addresses, that's just another tool that along the lines of the podium sign up is it does reduce one level of that, like I can say whoever I want to say I am.
Councilor Labarge.
Yes. So are we going to make a decision tonight? Because I would like to, since we're looking at a couple of little changes here, I'd like to have and think about this a little bit more and vote on it next time at our next meeting.
That's something we could consider. Councilor Jared.
Yeah, I was thinking about the mirroring of our sign-up sheet here. So what the sign-up sheet here gives is priority. Since it's actually not required, there's an ask at the end, is anyone else who's physically present wish to speak? So we could have a remote sign-up sheet, and those people would go first, and that would mirror what we currently have. But it would be optional in that case, once all the people who had, signed up online and physically signed up had gone, then other people could go. But I'm not sure that there's any advantage to that. But I was just thinking about the parity.
Councilor Moulton.
But by eliminating what had been the last sentence in the original version of the suggested changes, we've eliminated that discretion by the president to call on anybody after those who have signed up have spoken.
Yeah, in the proposal.
Yes.
I was thinking about what we have now with the sign-up sheet in person. It's not required. It just allows you to go first. And a similar approach, I'm not proposing that we have a remote approach where there's an optional sign-up sheet, but I'm just thinking about what we currently have, and if we wanted to have a parity with that for remote participants, it would be you optionally sign up, and that means you get to go before anyone else who hasn't signed up.
Okay, so what you're suggesting then is an optional sign-up sheet.
I'm putting it, I'm not really suggesting it. I'm suggesting we don't take action on this, on having a required sign-up remotely at this time. But it is something we could think about if we wanted to have that parity in the future.
And I want to add to Councilor Moulton's comment. So the last sentence that was removed at legislative matters. That's not existing language in our rules. That was language that Councilor Foster and I had added. So we're not changing that's not a change to our existing rules. So our practice right now is we encourage people to keep signing up or people raising their hands. That could continue. So. Councilor Labarge.
Yes. The sign-up sheets for years. Somebody came in, they would sign number one, next person two, and that sign-in sheet was followed thoroughly. First, number one, the name was brought forth, came forth, and spoke. So it wasn't just in random. It followed the Yellow Brick Road. One problem I have is here we're saying, and I'm looking at equity here and democracy. People are signing in here, and then we're saying, well, we don't want them, I don't think they should have to sign by remote. Well, that's not right either. So these people coming in are being told they have to sign, correct? So why are we not making it equal? Everybody's got to sign in. If not, then we have a problem. I don't like the idea of just people signing in here, and when they're doing remote, they don't have to.
Councilor Jarrett, I know you
So,
can respond.
yeah, so currently, you don't have to sign up there in order to speak in person. Because at the end of everyone who's signed up here, the, president will say, is there anyone else in the room who would like to speak, who hasn't signed up? So currently, you do not have to sign up. You're encouraged to, and that determines the order. But you don't have to, right?
No, I disagree. As long as I've been a counselor, you were told to sign up. I'm sorry, that's what we were told, people signed up.
But wouldn't you say you ask at the end, would anyone
Yeah, and
speak that hasn't signed up?
That's true, but the practice has been for whoever's presiding, that if we see a few more hands at the end of
Right,
public comment, and we're usually not asking them to sign up, so it's been kind of a courtesy sign up rather than
Exactly.
than a rigid rule. And I think if we implemented this, it would be more of a rule. And one other thing, which I didn't know about, is that when people show up in the Zoom, and the hands that show up, that's actually not always the order in which the hands are raised.
That's right.
And I didn't know that. I've been clicking on people, I've always been going by people in the, by their screens rather than on the list. And the mayor pointed that I had been doing that for about 2 years now. So a sign-up sheet would also allow, the presiding officer to follow an order based on who signed up. So.
Well, that was just like one of our city council meetings when we had come in a little bit earlier and people were coming through the door early, signing that sign-in sheet, and you told them it was right there on the podium. And then one of them said, where am I in line? Oh, number 3, okay.
Right. So, as the presiding officer, I sense, I don't know, I'm not sure people want to vote to implement this tonight. And that's the mood I'm taking in the room. And that Councilor Foster and I are comfortable with just saying, here you go, counselors, the 6 of you are coming back, and this, you've got some ground rules to employ here if you want to do that, should things get bad. But I think the discussion that's got us to this point has been really helpful for all of us to, to figure out what we value in terms of the comment from public, that, that we don't need to be so snowflakey at times, and, we can hear some tough stuff, and that's kind of what we signed up for. So, I'm okay with tabling this. What do you think?
Similar, yeah, I'm okay with that. The only thing I want to, before we totally agree to that, is there are a couple of minor tweaks that perhaps we might want to consider bringing back next time around. And that's just cleaning up the language a little bit around discretion at committee meetings, extra time for people with speech-related disabilities. So I don't know if those other parts, if we want to consider bringing back just those sort of, clarifications, rather than changing the intent of that public comment rule. We could certainly do that if we wanted.
Why don't we bring that to our next meeting?
Yep.
Because those
Exactly.
concepts, I think, were
Yes.
agreed upon, and we can get it done at the next meeting.
Yeah.
Councilor Maori?
Why not?
Yeah, I'm just feeling really grateful, especially since we are losing both of you, that to have this, as you say, ready to go. Because especially when emotions are running high, it takes a while to kind of chill out and kind of really think visionary in terms of where you want to go. And so I just really I'm so grateful for your proactivity here. And with no roadmap really, except for what some other communities have done, and you put a lot of work into this. And I really want to assure you that this has, been incredibly useful. And if nothing else, I think when we're sitting here in a meeting after you're gone and something like that happens again, I won't have that
That's right.
slight panic of where are we going with this? We'll have an option from people who are experienced and people who actually ran had to run the meetings for 2 years. So it's incredibly valuable to me. I am tempted by the sign-up sheet for remote. I understand parity. I also think that there is a difference between remote comment. There just is. I mean, they're not the same, and so I'm not so beholden to the idea that they have to, be treated exactly the same. I think it's a good goal to have parity, but remote is different, and we allow a lot of latitude. I guess you could come in here and hide your face in some certain way, but in a nefarious way. But I'm just saying that I don't really consider them exactly the same. But I do hear what Councilor Jarrett is saying, because I think what my concern really, in terms of balancing, access to comment versus a trend of creating a hostile environment for our residents to come and share, and that would be, if we had, regular, really not nice comments. I sound like I'm 95. Not nice. Comments that created an environment that was hostile. And that's not just, one night. I mean, and I don't want to even minimize that that's not traumatic for people, but I think you're right that it's kind of a trend, because to me, then that's a barrier. We're talking about barriers, and there's we might create some barriers. And so for me to weigh that barrier we're creating a barrier to people, not, being part of our meetings, because there's essentially this hostile force at work through, regularly happening. So I'm just, I don't think we're there yet, and I think that's true. And so I'm okay with not implementing it, but I think it is incredibly useful and really reassuring to have done this work, because it was a lot of work, and now we don't have to do it.
As long as you say, "We told you so," when you implement it.
Yes. I want to be at the public comment.
Councilor Moulton, then Councilor Labarge.
Well, we're going to do more than we told you so. We're going to call this the Nash Foster tool that we can pull out of our toolkit. It's a very difficult balancing act, and I'm concerned about what Councilor Jarrett has suggested, which I think is true, that people may come to a meeting either way and not think they're going to speak, but be inspired. And by not giving them that opportunity of exercising that public square inspiration, it's disruptive to democracy, which stuck with me from the last meeting of Councilor Perry very strongly expressed an opinion that we don't want our reaction to be disruptive to democracy. And I think that's very important to keep in mind.
Say something.
Councilor Labarge, then Councilor Perry.
I am very, very thankful, and I want to thank Councilor Foster, Councilor Nash, for getting involved. You could have just left us, period, and you didn't do that. And I want to thank you for doing what you did. And I think just let us hold on for about another week, week and a half, and let's work it out and finish it, because I think we're on our way.
Thank you, Councilor. Councilor Perry.
Cool. I want to echo sentiments of thanks for the work that you guys put in. You both, President and Vice President, were put in a difficult position. But I think that I very much side with Councilor Jarrett, is that any barriers to access for the public, for me, is something I can't stand for. And I also think that we are in an interesting point of our history in which, while Zoom meetings seem very new to us, a few years down the line, this will be commonplace. And we're still thinking like we're going to be able to put Pandora's box back, put everything back in Pandora's box. We're never going to go back to just all physical public comment, I don't think. So starting this conversation now is going to be important. And I'm sure that there'll be ways that we'll have to tweak it, because anytime, again, if you want to create something that you think is going to be a guideline, someone's going to go around that. You already stated that people will learn to sign in with a different name, et cetera. People will figure out ways to break that. The most important thing, though, is for people to have a space. And I think that while it feels weird for us now that Zoom comments, people can Zoom bomb and stuff, we have to look historically that in public forums and spaces, just the presence of certain people was a hostile environment. So if you were a person of color and you walk into a room and everyone else was not the same as you, that itself was a barrier. And so when we look at issues like this, we have to really take a broader view. And so, I fall on the side of Councilor Jarrett, where right now there is the potential for a problem, but luckily in our little bubble, we don't have that problem. Even I was telling some of you guys that in my last meeting that I was worried about someone on the Zoom, but I think that if we are vigilant, if we remain aware of such things, then we'll be prepared, and you guys have provided us with some of the groundwork to move forward on that. So I thank you for that, and I feel comfortable with keeping things as they are, and if we need to, opening up that toolbox and pulling out the Karen and Jim tool. So thank you guys for that work.
Is it time for the throwdown?
Okay, so Councilor Foster and I are going to tweak things a little bit. We're going to bring something back in 2 weeks that incorporates some of those ideas I think we all agreed on to our existing language, and we'll hopefully, well, we'll see what we do. Maybe we won't vote on that either. So I think we've covered this. Councilor Labarge?
Yes, I wanted to ask Councilor Foster, has school committee had the problems that we've had? Do you know?
Not, my understanding is not to that, not the same line, no. Yeah.
Because I'm also hearing that some of the other cities or towns who have had it, that they have closed their open public hearings.
Yeah, that's happening.
Yes.
Yep.
I hope this doesn't happen.
And it gets hard because school committee, you're hoping you have kids in the room too. So.
Yep, you're right.
So, okay, so you're still going to get the cookie, okay?
Shoot, Counselor Jarrett, we have 2 minutes. We are not going to make it.
I want the peanut butter fudge.
So now, we are up to the resolution. Item 23.402, a resolution calling on the federal government to pull back from the brink of nuclear war. And it's been my practice to allow the sponsors of resolutions to read them into the record. So Counselor Foster and Moulton, how do you want to do it?
We didn't talk about a plan, but I like it when co-sponsors take turns reading clauses. Do you want to do that?
It's better than a duet.
Yeah. My harmonies are off tonight.
Sure. Why don't you start us off?
Harmonize. Sing it. All right. R 23.402, a resolution calling on the federal government to pull back from the brink of nuclear war. Whereas 9 nations collectively have approximately 12,500 nuclear weapons in their arsenals, most of which are far more destructive than those that killed hundreds of thousands of people in Hiroshima and Nagasaki, Japan in 1945.
Whereas the detonation of even a small number of these weapons could have catastrophic human and environmental consequences that could threaten human civilization itself and affect everyone on the planet.
Whereas the United States maintains several hundred nuclear missiles in underground silos on hair trigger alert, capable of being launched within minutes after a presidential order, which greatly increases the risk of an accidental, mistaken, or unauthorized launch.
Whereas the United States continues to reserve the right to use nuclear weapons first, which reduces the threshold for nuclear use and makes a nuclear war more likely.
Whereas the U.S. President has the sole and unchecked authority to order the use of nuclear weapons.
Whereas the full cost of U.S. nuclear weapons in 2023 alone, including for weapons development, testing and maintenance, environmental cleanup, missile defense, and non-proliferation initiatives, will be an estimated $90 billion.
Whereas the United States plans to spend an estimated $756 billion between 2021 and 2030, and $1.7 trillion by 2046 to replace its entire nuclear arsenal and the bombers, missiles, and submarines that deliver them with more capable, more usable versions.
Whereas U.S. taxpayers spend roughly $10.3 million every hour of every day to maintain the U.S. nuclear arsenal and its associated costs.
Whereas the climate crisis, the COVID-19 pandemic, and numerous human security and social justice concerns highlight the need for greater investment in our communities, requiring the diversion of some of the $90 billion being spent this year to maintain the nuclear arsenal.
Whereas a grassroots coalition called Back from the Brink, bringing communities together to abolish nuclear weapons, has been endorsed by over 465 health, environmental, academic, peace, faith, and justice organizations, and over 80 United States municipalities, counties, and states have adopted resolutions supporting Back from the Brink's policy solutions, including Baltimore, Boston, Chicago, Los Angeles, Minneapolis, Salt Lake City, Tucson, and Washington, D.C.
Whereas the United States, as well as Britain, China, France, and Russia, are obligated under the Nuclear Non-Proliferation Treaty to take concrete steps toward eliminating their nuclear arsenals.
Whereas in July 2017, 122 nations approved the Treaty on the Prohibition of Nuclear Weapons, which entered into force on January 22, 2021, making it illegal under international law to develop, test, produce, manufacture, or otherwise acquire, possess, or stockpile nuclear weapons or other nuclear explosive devices. As of September 30th, 2023, 93 countries have signed the TPNW, and 69 countries have ratified it.
Whereas a total of 218 mayors, city councilors, county commissioners, and state legislators signed a letter sponsored by Back from the Brink that was delivered November 16th to the Biden administration. It urges the president to send an observer delegation to the second meeting of states parties to the Treaty on the Prohibition of Nuclear Weapons and to initiate negotiations with nuclear weapons states toward a verifiable, time-bound agreement to eliminate all nuclear weapons from the planet.
Whereas on November 16th, 2017, the Northampton City Council unanimously passed R17.425, a resolution calling for the United States to pull back from the brink and prevent nuclear war.
Now therefore be it resolved, the City of Northampton, Massachusetts calls on the United States to lead a global effort to prevent nuclear war by actively pursuing a verifiable agreement among nuclear-armed states to eliminate their nuclear arsenals, renouncing the option of using nuclear weapons first, ending the sole unchecked authority of any president to launch a nuclear attack, taking U.S. nuclear weapons off hair-trigger alert, and canceling the plan to replace its entire arsenal with enhanced weapons.
Be it further resolved that Northampton, Massachusetts calls on the United States to embrace the Treaty on the Prohibition of Nuclear Weapons.
Be it further resolved that a copy of this resolution will be sent to U.S. Senators Markey and Warren and U.S. Congressman McGovern and to President Joseph R. Biden.
Thank you. And the sponsors have the practices. You guys have the floor to speak to your resolution.
Yeah, this was brought to us by constituents of both Councilor Moulton and me. Northampton, Amherst, the Valley is home to some dedicated, brilliant, people working toward global nuclear disarmament. And this resolution is quite similar to one that was passed in 2017. It was passed unanimously by the City Council. And the reason we're bringing it back, which isn't a typical council policy. Typically, if a resolution has been passed, it stands on its own. But in that recognition that as global tensions have continued to increase, we are closer than we've been. And, the importance of renewing the calls and furthering the work.
And I would just add to that I think that we are responding to our Congressman, Jim McGovern's call last week. He was at the United Nations when he was addressing the need for all nations possessing nuclear weapons to adopt this treaty. And he called for, quote, a massive outpouring of grassroots action in support of nuclear arms control and ending the threat of nuclear weapons, end quote. So I think this is a way that we can respond to that call.
Thank you, Councilor. Councilor Maori.
Yeah, this is really, thank you. Thank you. You earned that cookie. Which I think Councilor Nash almost ate, but he said.
No cookies.
I was just going to say, reading this over earlier, it just really brought back, I can only speak for my generation, but this was a defining issue, for my generation, for Gen Xers. I mean, I just remember as a child, the growing kind of horror as you're getting older and kind of start understanding the world. It was almost too much for us to take in as children in the, late 70s, 80s. And then I remember the kind of, the hopefulness I felt with that. I don't remember that when that, I think it was in the early 80s, that large march in New York City, and just seeing the outpouring. But it's really in our DNA, and it's sobering to think how the specter of nuclear war really is in the DNA of so many of us who grew up. And it was actually, my first protest was at 15 at Groton, Connecticut, the nuclear subs there. And then I should talk to Ira about this. Ira's my constituent, but I joined we started a youth division of the Physicians for Social Responsibility, and we would really talk to teens, and it was just, you could see how it's one of those issues that, really defined how we saw our futures and our whole world. And it's interesting because, we were also, I think, as teen activists, concerned about the climate crisis. And I imagine this is kind of what, maybe young folks feel today about the climate crisis. But at a certain point, it was so overwhelming. And so hard to look at. And it's really hard to stay on task with activism around it. So that's all just to really say that I'm just grateful for folks who don't just throw their hands up and just feel, completely overwhelmed by this, much like the climate crisis, and that keep pushing for change. Yeah, we have to, even when we feel that paralysis, which I have to say that, I do because of the, the horror of it all. But anyway, thank you for doing this. Appreciate it.
I agree. Thank you. Thank you both.
Councilor Gore?
Yeah, I just want to say thank you for this resolution and for putting in just the amount of money that we spend on nuclear weapons is just, it's astronomical, and it can go to so many other things that we need, human services and helping people in other ways. And I just think, it's really important to support, coming back from the brink of nuclear war, and I'm going to support this resolution.
Councilor Jarrett?
Yeah, in my childhood in the 80s, the fear of nuclear annihilation is very present, in popular culture, in the news, in my mind. So though that seemed to lessen, it is now coming back. And that is very frightening. And I think some would say, there's the doctrine of mutually assured destruction, that no one will do it because they know everyone will be. So in order to do this, all of the states have to reduce, and I appreciate that message that it's all about, they're all reducing at the same time so that everyone is safer. And I think there's so many existential crises that we're facing right now, and this is a key one that's too easy to forget about. So I thank the community members and the sponsors for bringing it forward and taking the time to put it all together.
Councilor Labarge?
You're stopping by. In 2017, City Council passed a resolution. And you're looking at, over 7 years? And already we have problems. And it's sacrificing people's lives everywhere throughout the country. And coming from a military family, both sides, my husband and his 2 brothers, his brother-in-laws, his nieces and nephews here in the city of Northampton who have served our country. And one of my nephews, I'll never forget what he said in Vietnam. Of the things that he saw his own buddies go through, which you're hearing, how your veterans now are getting help because of what has happened to them going under nuclear war and so forth. It's bad. And they're under depression, they need a lot of help. And we don't forget it. My whole family, you talk with them, I'll talk to you about serving our country. And without them doing that, we all wouldn't be safe. So I just need to say that, and just now we see what's happening with all this fighting going on. And I have my husband who was saying, it's terrible, and it is absolutely unnecessary. Nuclear war, forget about it. I agree with that. Oh, what was that?
How did I do that?
Yeah, how did you end up on the
How
screen
do you
there?
make yourself the center of everything?
You spoke.
You spoke. You unmuted.
Oh,
briefly.
I unmuted. No, I'm not unmuted.
How did she do that?
She's magic.
But I'm muted.
You're up there doing a peace sign. Rachel.
Counselor, did you get your, did you? Okay.
Apologies for literally taking your spotlight. I'd like to make a motion.
Well,
There?
this is a resolution, and it'll
Yeah,
come
right.
around
Oh, right, I'm sorry.
in 2 weeks, and we'll vote on it then. It's very likely the last thing we will vote on for this term.
Right.
And
This is the
and-
first reading.
so I'm looking forward to this being my last vote on council. And you know, the specter of nuclear war, I can remember when I was like, I don't know, like 6 years old, and my aunt and uncle were over, and they're babysitting, or it was my aunt with a boyfriend, and they're talking about nuclear war, and, you know, I went to bed and I was just like, oh my God, they all got missiles and they could blow us up, and you know, and growing up with the specter of Vietnam, you know, Rich served, and that
He was lucky at the beginning of Vietnam.
this feeling of this, you know, this conveyor belt of like, as I got older, you know, it started hitting my teens, like, oh, here it comes, and, you know, and being faced with that, but you know, that this nuclear weapons is the first thing that just kind of, you know, just said to everybody in the world, we could just end it all. You know, that societies before that, they could do bad things, they could, you know, do terrible things to people, but we were never to the point where we could just make everything go away. And that it, you know, it still hovers over us today. And it's pretty stressful. And that, as Councilor Maori was pointing out, and that, you know, we keep adding other stresses on top of it, like climate change and stuff like that. Anyway, so I'll be voting yes, just to, as a sign of hope, and hoping we can figure some stuff out. And I'm glad that this is support of what Congressman McGovern is working on. I like it when our resolutions match with what our representatives are out there doing, so they can put this in their back pocket. And I want to thank the sponsors. So.
Well, Councilor Nash, hopefully we'll see you back in a couple of years.
Wait till you hear my song next week. So,
I got a good one.
I got to go. There's going to be a few. All right. Any other comments from councilors? Okay. Hearing none, I think we are at the end of the agenda, and I will entertain a motion to adjourn.
Move to adjourn.
Motion made by Councilor Labarge, seconded by Councilor Jarrett to adjourn. There's no discussion about adjourning. We can do a voice vote on this. All in favor of adjourning, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstaining? It doesn't matter. We are adjourned.